Riddle me this, pod fans. What's 90 minutes long, arrives every Friday, and all about the Caped Crusader? Why, it's Blabbin' About Batman, the animated series, the newest Patreon-exclusive podcast miniseries on the Talking Simpsons network.
That's right. For the rest of 2022, we'll be covering 8 of our favorite episodes of Batman, the animated series, with the same heavy-duty research, clips, and trivia you've come to expect from us. And if you sign up at the $5 level today at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons, you'll get to hear each episode as soon as it goes live.
Remember, sign up at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons to hear all 8 episodes of Blabbin' About Batman, the animated series, as well as the 100+ other exclusive podcast episodes we produced so far. So become a patron and join us through the rest of 2022 for another great miniseries. Same Bat Day, same Bat podcast feed.
Cartoons from present and the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to What a Cartoon, the podcast that's too darn ignorant to be afraid of most things. I'm one of your hosts, the bag of chum, Bob Mackey, and this is an audio exploration of every cartoon ever. Who is here with me today, as always?
Henry Gilbert, and I never dreamed I'd live long enough for you to say Earth Parallel Development and mean it, Bob.
I do. And this month's episode is The Adventures of Sam and Max, Freelance Police Cartoons, Christmas, Bloody Christmas, and Bad Day on the Moon.
I was hoping my last Christmas would be spent as an elf-shaped appetizer in a den full of psychotic criminal man-eaters.
Don't fret, little pal. They'll probably keep you alive for some time.
Woo.
Yes, a rare woo from Henry.
That
was a sad woo.
That line, I was like, wow. There's several lines in that episode that I'm like, they got away with that. Wow.
Yes, including a joke in this that's purely visual, but the darkest joke I've seen in a children's cartoon.
Yes, yeah.
That they would definitely not do today. But yes, we're talking about Sam and Max today. And I've had plans for this for a very long time because I bought the DVD set of this Fox Kids cartoon back when it was available. And I had no idea that it's now nightmarishly out of print.
Man, it's that's a recurring theme with Sam and Max collectibles, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, especially the comics. But yes, we kind of overdid it on Christmas last year, although it's more than happy to talk about, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Frosty, and I think we did the Grinch as well, right?
Yep, we did it all.
Yeah, we've covered mostly everything, and nobody wanted to hear about Mr. Magoo. They say, leave that old man in the grave where he belongs. So I wanted to talk about Sam and Max. Sam and Max also has a Christmas segment, so here we are today talking about the characters and their very, very short-lived 97-98 Fox Kids cartoon. Sam and Max, the freelance police, as it were, when that was not a loaded term.
Yes, yeah. It's that's so much part of their appeal that, like, freelance police, that's just made up. That just means vigilantes or like crazy idiots with guns.
But they do work for the commissioner.
Yes.
But of course, Sam and Max, we've mentioned them before. I've done a few podcasts about them before for Retronauts, both for the classic 93 adventure game and the remake of the first season of the Telltale games. We'll talk more about those later. Before I give my history, Henry, or aka Max, yes. Max Gilbert.
Yes, yeah.
What is your history of Sam and Max?
Well, yes, as Bob alluded to, and longtime listeners know, growing up, until I was a big boy and went by Henry at my jobs, I was known as Max growing up, and I have a brother named Sam. So you can imagine our excitement in learning that there was Sam and Max characters in a funny comic book. But I have to, act like a bit of a Sam and Max hipster here. Like, Bob is a bigger Sam and Max expert than me. I've only lightly touched the games. I wished when those games came out in the 90s, the one game came out in the 90s, I wish I had a PC that could have played it. I couldn't. But because my name was Max, my brother's name was Sam, when my cool uncle who lived in the Bay Area, who went to indie comic shops in the late 80s and early 90s, saw that there were Sam and Max comics, he's like, wait, there's a weird comic about a rabbit and a dog named after my nephews or with the same name as my nephews. I bet they get a kick out of this. So I had to look up the publishing dates on these comics just so I could map it out correctly. But yeah, the On to the Road comic that came out in 88 We were gifted with a first printing of that, I believe, in 1990 as a gift from my uncle. And my brother and I loved it. The appeal of Sam and Max, why it works great as this cartoon, even for kids, is that it can be loved by weird Gen X and Boomer guys, but also it is appealing to children with funny animals who do violent things.
It's mostly about late Boomer, early Gen X nostalgia and cultural touchstones, but also it's fun animal characters who get into scrapes and have fun dialogue with each other.
I mean, the strange verbiage, the odd trivia, all of the like Americana like trash that surrounds them in every single panel. Like, yeah, I just loved it as a kid. Read it a million times. Nobody else I knew had heard of it until the game came out. And as well, in 1995, my uncle gifted us with a signed copy of Surfin' the Highway collection.
Oh my God, Henry, do you have these comics?
I know it's in here somewhere. I'm gonna find
I've heard that statement before. It's in here somewhere.
I'll find it when I move. When I move, that's the excuse to look for, because I can't imagine I'd get rid of it. The only reason I wouldn't have is if my brother kept it instead. But
wow, so we were both owners of the very, very rare now Surfin' the Highway.
I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't know how to special order it in 95 as a kid. I wouldn't have bought it. It's all because my cool uncle, who, I didn't realize he lived in the same town as Steve Purcell in the Bay Area.
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
So that's how he went to a signing for the book. And I'll never forget, Steve Purcell drew a funny, it's the head of Sam and Max. And he wrote, "To Sam and Max."
Aww.
And Max says, "These kids have weird names."
That's cute. Oh my God, you have to find this. I need to see this.
I know. It's in here somewhere. I know it.
You need a special shelf of like keepsakes.
Yes, and look, there's a system to it, I swear.
The Sam and Max history shelf. By that I mean you and your brother.
But yes, I loved Sam and Max as a kid. I probably would not have subscribed to the LucasArts newsletter if I didn't find out that there were full color Sam and Max comics in it. And I got to meet Purcell in person at the 2008 San Diego Comic-Con.
Oh, cool!
And tell him, like, really, I love your stuff. It's so great to meet you. And he's like, he thanked me. It was really nice.
They were filming the featurette on the DVD while you were getting your thing signed.
I bet you're right. Oh yeah, man, it's the same time. You're right.
Not to skip too far ahead, but there's an interview on the DVD, the Shaft Factory DVD. It's a 15-minute interview with Purcell, and he's literally like signing things for people and kind of just looking over at the camera occasionally. I don't think they were able to find time to sit down with him, really.
Hey, when you're even at his level of comic book notoriety, every second of your day is set at Comic-Con. Like you can't find time for anything.
And as for me, I found out about the characters like how most people did through the 1993 LucasArts adventure game, although I could not play adventure games because our family did not get a PC until 1996. So when I would hang out in the video game stores, I would just look at the boxes for the adventure games and imagine just how amazing they would be. And it didn't help that Steve Purcell's box art for that game is just amazing. Like all the cover art for all the Sam Max things, just crammed with details, fun action, lots of little in-jokes and references. And finally, when our family got a PC, I was able to catch up with the games, and I liked the Sam Max game a lot. Returning to it, I'm like, well, this is a very flawed adventure game, and the later ones are better, but I still have nostalgia for it. And of course, I was on board for the Fox Kids cartoon, and I watched about half of it, but I think I was too much of a snob about how I wanted the characters to sound and act.
Yeah, me too.
So, but I appreciate it more now, and I followed the characters throughout all of their reboots. I played all 3 seasons of the Telltale Adventure games. By the way, the first 2 seasons have been remastered. The third one is going to be remastered. Check those out. They're available on every platform. They hold up very well, and I'll talk more about this soon. There was a new 2021 Sam & Max video game for virtual reality called Sam & Max. This time it's virtual. It basically uses Telltale assets, but it's a pretty fun VR game with Sam & Max, and I played most of it yesterday before I ate Thanksgiving dinner.
That's rocking,
yes.
Man. I had missed the news on that. That's so... Well, and I mean that Purcell, that it's what makes Sam & Max so interesting for over the decades is that Purcell has kept a pretty tight leash on it. It's like they're his babies. He never sold them. I believe he still owns them, the characters, like, and also with Sam & Max, yes, when this premiered, I was very excited that Sam & Max were finally getting their own cartoon, but unfortunately I was 8 when I first read Sam and Max. I was 15 or 16 when these episodes aired, and so I wasn't giving them as much of a chance. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm grown up now, and also I knew the stuff they changed, especially Bad Day in the Moon. I had like memorized even by that point, and so I knew what had changed. I was like, they wussed out on this stuff. They don't hold revolvers anymore, but I think too what really hurt the first was that the first episode seemed to imply that they would have a kid sidekick the entire series.
Yeah.
And that made me hate it. I was like, oh man, they ruined Sam and Max, gave him a kid sidekick. So I skipped a lot of episodes until the Bad Day in the Moon one, actually.
We'll talk more about the geek and the networking positions, but I feel like the cartoon came out fairly well without having to change too much, although maybe it would have been better if it was like a USA-style Duckman show, but Sam and Max aren't like a dirty pair of characters. Like at worst, they say hell and damn, and that's basically it. And they're waving around huge guns, but they're like cartoonishly big, and no one's actually being shot and murdered with them.
Yeah.
Like if you think it's like Fritz the Cat style black and white, indie comic, that's not the case at all. It's kind of like maybe PG-13 at most
on their worst day.
Yeah.
I mean, it's PG. Like I will say when I was a little kid reading Sam and Max comics, I would read them along out loud, but then they'd get to say, like, when Max will say to Sam, none of your damn business, I would read it out loud and be like, none of your business. Because I was like, I'll get in trouble if I say the word Max says
Is
there.
mom at least 3 rooms away? I was just quoting Max.
No.
Also, I like what you said when I was reading the comics. What, all 3 of them that exist?
Yeah, all those comics.
There's not a lot of Sam and Max material out there, everyone.
Well, because they were just so dense, I can see why he could not produce that too much of it. It was also though funny that Sam and Max are actually like the big brother is Sam, if any character is, but I am the older brother and Max is the little brother in the comics. So it actually was kind of a like, oh, me and my brother are more like the opposite of our names in the series.
You should have voted for a renaming of the children.
I should have said, God, what, did I become Sam?
Yes, because you're bigger. Let's talk about Steve Purcell in the pre-game history of Sam and Max. So I covered Sam and Max in an early 2020 episode of Retronauts. I played Sam and Max on the way back from Vancouver on the plane. And then the pandemic happened. I didn't see my wife for 9 months.
Ooh,
so that's
man.
one of my last memories is like playing Sam and Max Hit the Road on my tablet on the way back from Vancouver and then recording Sam and Max podcast as the early lockdown stuff was happening.
Oh boy, man. You were playing Hitting the Road as people were not allowed to hit the road for a long time.
They were not. So yeah, a lot of this history is from that episode, but I've expanded upon it a lot. It's not going to be a complete retread. Of course, Henry's here to chime in. Let's talk about Steve Purcell. So born October 1st, 1961, Steve Purcell is the creator of Sam and Max. And like you said, Henry, he owns the copyright to them, meaning Disney does not own them despite them being in a LucasArts game.
Man, I honestly am still shocked that he was able to hold on to it. Like it, and it feels like these things of him getting to have his stuff licensed was like one of the last times that got to happen. Like after Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles made indie comic creators rich with these things, like by the mid 90s, people would just say like, we should, the businessmen who hate sharing money tell themselves we should have just ripped off the Ninja Turtles and made our own thing and sell that instead of giving money to the creators.
Yeah, what's this giving creators money thing?
Yeah.
I mean, it's cute. We'll talk about the LucasArts stuff later, but when he gets to LucasArts, he starts putting Sam and Max as cameos in the games because he's an artist on the games and they're his characters. He thinks it's cute. But now, to follow the tradition, whenever they do that, they have to say Sam and Max appear courtesy of Steve Purcell.
Wow,
Yeah.
man. Like, literally, you'd be fired. You try to do that in a Star Wars game now.
Yeah.
Disney would, they would sue you until they own your children. That's what they do in response.
So perhaps you can relate to this, Henry, because the story of Sam and Max comes from older brother on younger brother bullying.
Oh, so is Steve the Max then?
You're going to find out
Okay.
because technically he's the creator, but Sam and Max are a creation of his brother Dave. So the two drew their own comics as kids. Dave would leave his unfinished ones around the house, starring Sam and Max. And Steve would troll his brother by quote-unquote finishing these comics by having the characters make fun of how poorly they were drawn. They would forget each other's names. They would over-explain the plot, etc.
Wow.
So that explains why the characters act the way they do in the early comics, including Bad Day on the Moon. They're just making fun of how bad they are and how poorly researched the backgrounds are and things like that. So Sam and Max are a product of bullying. So technically, Dave Purcell created Sam and Max, and you can see online, if you look Sam and Max early drawings, there is a version of Dave's characters and the version that Steve redrew, where frankly Dave's version was propaganda, and in Steve's early comics it's Max saying, "Let's kill some crooks," and Sam says, "That's right, Max, crime is an invitation to the crypt."
Oh man,
Yes.
that's amazing. So I think I told you before that like it and Mystery Science Theater feel like of the same style, but I didn't realize it actually started with like basically doing an MST3K over his brother's bad comics.
Yeah, I mean, that's why Bad Day on the Moon, they're like, I didn't know you could breathe on the moon. Like, everything is inaccurate and wrong. And yeah, in the early comics, they forget their own names. They call each other by the wrong names and things like that.
See, again, this is me and my brother love that because our mom, look, moms do this. They just go like, Max, dude, like they're saying, Sam, like just when you got two kids and you're a busy person, I get it. Just like, yeah. But so we thought when the characters would mix up their names, we're like, oh, that's like us, like how our mom mixes up our names.
That's adorable.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you didn't treat your brother this poorly by mocking his creations and then making them into very marketable characters.
I feel like it was the other way around in our relationship, more likely.
He was terrorizing you.
And look, we were all kids here. I don't want to blame.
Let's
him too
dredge
much.
this up. So yes, during one of Steve Purcell's birthdays, Dave gave Steve the rights to the characters, and so they were his ever since. So by 1980, Steve was drawing weekly Sam and Max comics for the California College of Arts weekly newsletter. And then from that point on, he's spending the 80s working as a commercial illustrator, Steve Purcell. He also penciled what he called a, quote, a few forgettable Marvel books. And I looked these up. He penciled two Marvel books. One is New Mutants 43 from 83, and another one is Alpha Flight 47 from 87. So
interesting,
yeah.
Man. Those fill-in books. You know, actually, I think I've heard stories about that before. That you're dredging up memories for me of like basically. I believe I've heard it on the YouTube channel I've talked about before, which everybody, if you love comics of my childhood, you'll enjoy Cartoonist Kayfabe, where two professional comic artists talk about other people's comic art, and they mention Steve Purcell's couple of fill-in books there, and I believe they say that they had heard from him that the reason after doing two, he's like, oh, this pays shit. I'm gonna keep doing commercial art.
Yeah, and it's a lot of work. So he only did two Marvel comics. So it feels like the story of Sam and Max becoming popular is a story of people asking Steve Purcell to do Sam and Max things, because it's the late 80s. Black and white indie comics are kind of hitting a peak in terms of popularity within a limited range, and funny animal books are also popular too.
Especially thanks to those darn turtles.
Yes, exactly. So in 87, based on the success of Fish Police, later to become a forgotten TV series.
Whoa.
Yes, the creator of Fish Police, Stephen Monkhuse, is friends with Steve Purcell, and he's like, dude, I really want you to do a Sam Max comic for my indie label, Fish Rat Productions. So it's because of Fish Police that Sam and Max ever became a comic book.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't know that either. Wow.
So Steve Purcell does one comic, and he's like, it's probably the only chance I'll ever get to do this. So he works every Sam and Max idea into this one comic. And a year later, Steve Purcell is hired by Lucasfilm Games, later to be known as LucasArts, because their idea was, instead of hiring programmers and teaching them how to draw, let's hire artists and teach them how to draw via pixels, which is what they did with Steve Purcell. Steve Purcell would later do like pixel art for games, and of course, he would do paintings for the covers and things like that.
That's awesome. I didn't know that's how he didn't have a computer background before that. That's really cool. It reminds me of the story I heard of Yoichi Katabe, the artist, when he got hired by Nintendo after he'd worked on a lot of the pre-Ghibli stuff with Hayao Miyazaki. Katase got hired there, and they were like, well, you're a great animator and amazing at character design. let's teach you, how to help us animate sprites. And it was a really interesting, like, information exchange there, too.
It's a smart way to make good video game art.
Yeah.
Which was not being done at the time. So, yeah, LucasArts hires him in 88. He basically puts out a Sam & Max book whenever he can under various different labels. So he owns the characters, and I guess he's just selling the book to different labels to publish the characters in different comic books.
Yeah, well, I mean, there were so many, like, boutique small press things that, back in the pre-internet days, you have one bad print run, you're just done. Like Comico, I believe, is one of the publishing houses, and I only know them from stories by other creators of like, yeah, they still owe me a paycheck for books I sold with them.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, these single issues were not easy to find. They're not on your supermarket shelf next to Superman and Batman. You had to go to a comic store and hope that they were carrying these kind of comics. They were very hard to find, and thanks to the popularity of the adventure game, there was the Surfin' the Highway collection in 95 that collected all the known Sam & Max material, and now there's slightly more because there was a 2008 reprint of that in hardcover with the Telltale games. They were out around the time. Both of those are nightmarishly out of print. There's never been another version of that in print. They're not available digitally. Steve Purcell, just make a digital version of Surfin' the Highway, because it can only happen if he makes it happen. Nobody else can make it happen.
It's only if he wants it to happen, and it seems like he's a busy guy. I'm sure you'll get to that, but I count myself extremely lucky. I likely would not have moved to Berkeley if I didn't have the cool uncle who bought comic books at a cool comic book store to show me such a thing existed. Like, my first trip to Berkeley was when I was, believe, 14 or 15, and he took me to the comic shop that's like on the main street Shattuck here, or was, and that made me go like, I would love to live here. I could live by this comic shop and all this other cool stuff.
It moved way, way, way down the street in a much smaller place.
And it's under crappier new management, I'll tell you.
Oh, that stinks.
Yeah.
So Surfin' the Highway, that came out in 96, I think, and I saw it at the bookstore a lot, and I was like, $15. I didn't have a job. I was 14, and I thought, I can't justify buying this, and then it disappeared. And then by the year 2000, I got my first credit card, and at that point, the book was like $80. Because it was very out of print. Now it's like I can't even find it. I'm sure it's like $600 if you want to buy it now. But I found a used bookstore who didn't know what it was, who was selling it for $20, and that's how I got mine.
Oh, you lucky dog! That's great.
Yes. There's a very lucky dog. He's called Sam. Yes. So there's not a lot of Sam & Max material. So there are 4 single issues. Everything Steve Purcell drew for the LucasArts newsletter, The Adventurer, and then there's one 12-page Eisner-winning reboot comic called The Big Sleep. But Steve Purcell does a lot of original Sam & Max art for packaging and for fun and things like that. Actually, when doing the research for this, I was just looking up Sam & Max everything, and I was like, oh man, Sam & Max had an exhibit at the Cartoon Art Museum in SF in 2014, and I didn't go. And then I searched my Twitter. I did go to that.
Oh, wow.
I went on the last day, and there's a picture on my Twitter of one of the paintings. I wish I would have taken more pictures. But yes, there was a Sam & Max exhibit in SF with all the original art. It was amazing.
Man, I wish I'd have gone to that. I'm jealous. That's great.
It was 9 years ago, so maybe they'll be back.
Thanks to, and social media lets you remember you did go to it.
Yes,
How you like that?
when my brain fails me. But yes, Sam & Max, not a lot of content, but still more comic material than Duckman ever had.
And the late Everett Peck, he is also a great artist, but you can see why it was also so slow for him to put out those comics. Every page is so dense with just detail. Like, it feels like he looks in the corner of a panel and says like, a rat eating garbage could fit in there. I'll just doodle it right there.
Yeah, no panel. A panel is rarely just a head with a word bubble. There's always something happening, and he loves just a giant one-page spread of just characters walking through a filthy alley, all these dialogue bubbles, all kinds of like trash with like little jokes crammed into it. Just he is so good at layouts.
Yeah, it's something for the show that I think they deal with it pretty well with. But a unique thing about Sam & Max is that every page is so dense with imagery that you don't mind as much that there's just a wall of text and word balloons, but it's a challenge that they mostly meet in these episodes of having that kind of dialogue be said aloud in real time instead of being read on a page at the speed you want to read it.
It's a real challenge for the actors.
Yes.
Let's talk about Purcell and Lucasfilm Games, or later LucasArts, as most people know it now. This is not a video game podcast. Sam & Max would not be a cartoon, would not live on past the comics if not for the 1993 adventure game. Let's talk about that. So, Steve Purcell, hired by Lucasfilm Games in '88. His first role at the company was on an artist on what he called, quote, a role-playing game with cat-headed babes. That gets canceled. He gets laid off, but he's asked to do the cover for the adventure game Zack McCracken and the Alien Mindbenders. So this work gets him rehired, and he went on to be a fairly prominent artist for the company, doing cover art, backgrounds in games, animation, and more. He's done the covers for Monkey Island 1 and 2, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Loom, and of course, Sam & Max Hit the Road, which is a great cover. I just want a poster of that art somewhere when I eventually have enough room for an office.
It's amazing art. So packed full of imagery. I love. It's something that unfortunately is hard for it. I think it works probably pretty well for an adventure game where you're going to be looking at like one background full of crap all the time. But for animation on a TV budget, a little tougher to do.
They still really nail the backgrounds on these episodes, though. This is the best looking Nelvana thing they've ever made, I think.
I think you're right. Yeah. Especially on a TV budget.
Definitely. So Sam & Max kind of become the unofficial Lucasfilm Games / LucasArts mascots because, again, like I said earlier, Steve is sneaking them into every game. They make their first appearance in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, that adventure game. And then eventually by 1990, LucasArts is like, we want you to do a comic for our newsletter. He's like, okay, but it's got to be starring Sam & Max. So it's basically Sam & Max like walking through whatever the newest game was and sort of making fun of it. And those are all really good, all in color. Those are in the Surfin' the Highway collection as well.
They're all amazing. I didn't get to read them all until that collection, but I did prize a couple of the newsletters I got as a kid that had, I mean, now it is so fucking boring to be impressed by this, but Sam and Max are imitating scenes from Star Wars. Wow, jokes about Star Wars?
Hey, it was like 92. Nobody was doing this.
Yeah, I know. It was incredibly impressive to me then. This is a pre-Clerks world of a comic book making fun of Star Wars. You never saw this stuff. I am sick to death, and if I never hear a joke about Star Wars again, it'll be too soon. But it really did feel special and cool then.
We're going to get a bit nerdy here to explain how LucasArts made their games, their adventure games. Essentially, they made a system called the SCUM system, that stands for Script Creation Utility for Maniac Mansion. What it really was basically, to put it in layman's terms, it was basically Mario Maker for adventure games, where you could hire people to make adventure games. They wouldn't need to know how to code anything because you had the tools on the screen in front of you. All the scripting was done like via this very smart engine that you could directly like edit at will. It let you do things on the fly without necessarily digging into the programming. So when you got hired for Lucasfilm Games to make adventure games, they would put you through something called SCUM University, which is like, here, like, make little adventure game scenarios. And for that program, they made Sam and Max as characters for use in the tool set. So you had Sam, you had Max, you had their office, and people were making unofficial Sam and Max adventure games before the idea of making a full one for retail release was even an idea. So these assets existed and people were using them. So it was just a natural extent of Sam and Max being the company's unofficial mascots and Purcell working at the company.
That's so cool. And that kind of ease to entry is probably why so many of those SCUM games had so many creative people working on them who couldn't get in the door at other video game developer places because they wouldn't have had the expertise or programming knowledge to make those kind of jokes. So like you said, you get funny, talented people who then become programmers instead of getting the bad sense of humor of somebody who's a good programmer.
Yeah, like a Sierra adventure game. Yuck. I mean, the great part of this utility, it was very easy to use, and also you can change things on the fly. It's not like with regular programming, you can change one thing and everything else will fall apart. It's like, no, I want to change this one line of dialogue, or I want to make sure this item does this. It's very easy to do with the SCUM system.
That's cool.
So yeah, I just had to explain what that was to let you know that Sam and Max were basically being made into unofficial adventure games within the company by people training to use the tools to make real adventure games. So at this point, It's 1993. They need an adventure game to come out before Christmas, and it's interesting that, like, I think Sam & Max is the last adventure game to come out before Doom. And Doom is what kind of kills the medium, because
Wow.
Doom is what draws everybody to PC games, not just the nerds who know how to use a computer. And then it's kind of over for adventure games from that point onward. But this is like the last one to get in. So they need to make one quickly, and Sam & Max is on the agenda. Purcell agrees to do it, but at this point, he's getting ready to leave LucasArts and return to freelancing. So the game was approved, and he is working on it remotely with his wife while they're working on it at LucasArts. So he's sort of going over everything, writing the dialogue, but kind of taking a supervisory role from a distance, which is what he's doing on the cartoon 4 years later.
That's really cool. I figured he was still in the studio doing it remotely. That's really neat.
He knew he could get more as a freelancer.
Yeah, hey, just like Sam and Max, the life of a freelancer.
And also, if you listen to my Retronauts about the LucasArts games, I've done a series and I'm not done with it yet, but at a certain point in time, the company culture really changed and a lot of people were leaving. And that's around the time the company culture was really changing. So I'm not surprised that he was leaving as well.
Well, I mean, that's when LucasArts became much more of the Star Wars factory, right? Like,
yeah, and it's after Lucas lost a lot of money on 80s movies that didn't go anywhere, and he needed the just have fun company to be the make money as soon as possible company.
And what? There was a divorce too in there somewhere as well.
I think a bit earlier.
Okay,
but
yeah. No, that's boy, that's sad. So then, what with Doom coming out not long after that, then is the Doom game they made of
Dark Forces.
Dark Forces.
Yeah, they're still doing annual adventure games until, I don't know, 98, and then Curse of Monkey Island's the last one in 2000, and then there's some canceled stuff. We'll talk about it later. So we can talk about the post-97 Purcell Sam & Max stuff once we get to the end of this history section, but we can briefly talk about what Purcell has done after working on the Fox series, which we're going to talk about soon, and one word is Pixar, because he's been with Pixar for over 20 years at this point, because he has never left Northern California.
It's pretty cool that he made all of this cartoon work without moving to, like, if you work in comics, you're expected to live in New York, or at least you were back then, and if you work in animation, you're supposed to live in Burbank, but here he was able to resist this whole time, and I guess it really helped him too that I would assume Pixar folks know LucasArts folks.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, LucasArts is in, or I think still is in the Bay Area. Like, Lucasfilm Ranch is in the Bay Area, so he never left the Bay Area. God bless him.
Yeah.
So his first Pixar credit is on Cars, and he seems to be a big Cars guy within Pixar, believe it or not. I mean, I guess like the Americana baby boomerish sense of Sam & Max, it does lend well to Cars, although in the case of Cars, it's more embracing that tacky part of America instead of just like making fun of it.
Certainly not as snide towards it, yeah. But I guess when his most famous thing is about a road trip in an old car, I suppose I can see why he'd fit so well for Cars, yeah.
So he's accredited with additional screenplay material on Cars, and he's also credited for story and scripts for 3 of the Cars games from that era. So they put him on the video games to make sure they were of a certain quality, and I've heard the Cars games from the Generation 7 of consoles are actually pretty good.
The THQ published ones, I remember they sold insane. They were huge sellers, and yeah, Purcell, I could see him fitting into that company culture really well, not just based on his like age and background, but also Pixar has always prized having great cartoonists be story guys. Like I could totally see him fitting in with the Joe Ramps of the group there.
Yeah, and I guess Cars is a nice fit, although I want to see him doing something different.
Yeah,
but
you did then.
Yes, because his biggest role at the company so far is being the co-director and head of story on Brave. So I'm guessing Steve Purcell has an Oscar, or he is basically listed as senior creative team at Pixar for a lot of movies, so I assume Steve Purcell has several Oscars at this point.
Yeah, he's got to.
Yeah.
It's fun. I never really connected those two, but yeah, Steve, so the creator of Sam & Max is I would bet an Oscar winner now.
We just did Paranorman for our cartoon movie last month, and something that was surprising to me was that Brave was the Oscar winner that year. When the stance on Brave is like, oh, the shitty movie that sucks. It's an okay movie, but that's the Oscar movie for 2012.
It's not. It is pretty crazy. And,
Yeah.
well, and I always assumed that the boy comedy that's in it is more of the Purcell stuff in it, but I could be wrong.
Hey, there's a great crow in that movie too.
Oh yeah.
I was skimming through to remind myself of Brave. I'm like, it wasn't that bad.
But that was when I learned Purcell. I didn't stay super up to date with what his jobs had been post Sam and Max until I saw Brave in theaters and saw, because his name is so early in the credits as co-director. I was like, wait, what?
I think that's why I went to see Brave, because I wasn't seeing a lot of movies in theaters at the time, but I was like, Steve Purcell made this movie.
Well, it came out back when every Pixar movie was an event.
Yeah.
Which it really isn't now. It's they're not so special.
That's probably why it won the Oscar. It's like, we just give these to Pixar, right?
Yeah, this is, if there was a Pixar movie this year, we give it. Yeah.
So Purcell wrote and directed the Toy Story special, Toy Story That Time Forgot. I just watched that a few years ago. I had never seen it before. It's very good.
Yeah. Also very in his style of a bunch of like packed with gags and a lot of silly lines and a whole lot of like crap everywhere. Like a lot of detritus.
Although it's anti-gamer, because the story is Bonnie goes to play at this kid's house. This kid has an entire playroom of unplayed with toys because he is a gamer.
Right. It is anti-gamer, man. How can Purcell turn his back on the gamers that made him famous?
I can't believe it. It's sad, really. So in recent years, like I said, he is listed as senior creative team. He's a bigwig at Pixar. And he's been back to the car as well recently. He's a major director and writer of the 2022 Disney Plus series Cars on the Road.
Okay. I certainly haven't watched those, but now that I know this, I think I probably will pull them up.
Maybe watch the Monsters, Inc. series first.
Okay.
You can tell Pixar wants to make their TV series of a certain quality, which is why there's only 8 episodes of this.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and also, I did watch the Forky's Got a Question ones, which... they're cute and all, but they also are very like, we have 2 backgrounds here. Forky walks around.
Yes. We were busy making movies, folks. Let's talk about the cartoon. So the official name of this cartoon is The Adventures of Sam and Max, Freelance Police. Although if you pull it up on Tubi, I think it's just Sam and Max. So I think this is just for like accounting purposes. It's called this or something. But for some reason, the word adventures is there. Probably like a Fox Kids mandate or something.
Yeah, I could guess they're like, hey, we call some of our stuff adventures here. Also, maybe he owned the rights to Sam and Max : Freelance Police, and somebody in the system wanted to like, well, no, we have to give it a unique title, so we sort of own that title. I could see that.
So 13 episodes. It ran on the Fox Kids Saturday morning block from October 4th, 97 to April 25th, 1998. Because it's very, very Canadian.
So Canadian.
It also aired on YTV. You'll hear Sam say, sorry, Max.
For a time in the 90s, I thought Steve Purcell was Canadian because Eek the Cat was also an Nelvana thing, and it was very Canadian as well. I was and probably I was watching this around the same time as MST3K taught me.
Oh, right.
They did so many jokes about like, hey, this was filmed in Canada that I was more on the watch for that.
No, it's just a Nelvana thing, which is why the stink of maple is all over it. The stink of Toronto.
It screams back bacon, as Tom Servo once said.
There's actually not very much info on how this cartoon came to be, but thankfully the Shout Factory DVD release from 2008 contains the entire series Bible. And it's very funny. If you go to it on the bonus menu, a screen pops up and says, you don't want to read this on your TV screen. The PDF is on the CD-ROM. So I just dragged it to my desktop and opened it that way.
Oh, that's hilarious. Oh, that's so funny that they even tell you like, well, I mean, I friggin' wish that was the option on the storyboards that are on Simpsons DVDs.
Oh, God, me too. Yes, and there's a short interview with Purcell on the disc. That's him just kind of looking over while signing things and going over the history of the show. But it's pretty basic, actually. So Sam and Max's cartoon journey begins with a guy named J.D. Smith. He was a story editor for Nelvana. We'll do a bio on him later. But Smith, within Nelvana, a big fan of Sam and Max, and he was championing for a Sam and Max cartoon, and he reached out to Purcell and said, let's get together, we'll make a story Bible, and we'll pitch it to the networks. And by the way, the story Bible is labeled October 95. So it's 2 years between them writing the Bible, pitching it to Fox, and then making the series.
That makes that timeline feels pretty standard then from like pitch to release. Yeah.
And Purcell says that Smith really understood the characters, the way they talk to each other. And I think even if Purcell is not writing all the episodes, they nail the dialogue between the two.
Oh my God, do they? Yeah. Like the Christmas episode has the exact same voice as the Bad Day on the Moon, which is, I'd say like what, a 75% the same adaptation.
Yeah, or a little more. But yeah, it's like they nail, even like, nailing the patter and like the attitude of the characters is so essential, and I think everything has to date has gotten it right. But Purcell is he was concerned about like, do you think this is okay for kids? It's sort of like, it's not an all ages comic, it's not like dirty or anything, but he was assured like, even if you have to lose the violence and the guns, you can keep the weirdness, and the show really does keep the weirdness and like the obscure references, and there's some naughty stuff in here that they definitely could not do again, or they couldn't do if anyone was paying attention in the first place.
I'm shocked they got to do it the first time, really.
Yeah. So Purcell is credited with being a creative consultant and the creator of the show, of course, but as a Californian, he mostly worked remotely and received everything via fax because it's 1996 when he's working on the show in 97.
Right.
But he does go to Toronto a few times to do casting, but most of the time he's back in Northern California and having like meetings on the phone with J.D. Smith and going over the scripts and the storyboards and everything like that.
You know, it's funny when we talk about like Canadian productions on What a Cartoon. Usually we're talking about Vancouver-based people, but this is more of the Ontario-based style of comedy.
That's why you hear those accents.
Yeah.
So the network gave a bit of pushback. They're like, we need you to add a girl to the show. And you can even make Max a girl. You don't even have to acknowledge it. Just we can all think that Max is a girl. Maybe Max can be voiced by a girl. But C. Purcell's like, if Max is a girl, you have to use like she and her, and people are gonna know. So we can't make Max a girl. I mean, Max does feel kind of sexless, although there's a masculine energy. Although Sam in the comic says you don't even like girls, Max.
Yes, yeah, he's a pretty like a lot of the time they barely even call him like a rabbit or anything. It's like lagomorph weirdo, like
rabbity thing.
Yeah, rabbity thing. Yeah.
But instead,
and he has no genitals either.
No genitals.
Yeah.
But instead, they reworked this character in their story bible called the Geek. He's an adult male, but they make him into a younger girl. And, the Geek is front-loaded in the series, but she's, like, barely in the show at all. And when she's in it, she never dominates. Like, there are no Geek stories.
See, that was, that was something that hurt my enjoyment of the show at first. I had a negative first reaction because by this point, I knew about, they added a kid to this. They're ruining the show by adding a kid. Because, like you said, they front-loaded with the Geek. When I then was just reminding myself of the rest of the series, skipping around on YouTube for it, I was like, oh wow, that's the Geek is barely in this thing. But I mean, it is a real sausage fest, the Sam and Max comics. Like, I think it's very rare a woman ever appears on the page of one. Like, but it's a bro energy. Like that, it's kind of what it's about.
There's like a babe in the story bible. There's a lot of things in the story bible that didn't make it the cut, and actually, I don't like the idea of Sam and Max having villains, which there are a few, but they're not taken seriously. I just feel like they should be having a random adventure because normally every Sam and Max cartoon starts off, well, here we are in blank, and there's no real reason why they're there. Just like, we're going to put them in this setting and see how they talk to each other and see what happens. Like, I don't like the idea of recurring characters in their world.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's basically it for the history, because this was canceled for the obvious reason. These kind of surreal, expensive comedies for kids were no longer hot on TV because A, they were a lot of money to do, and B, they were kind of reaching for an older audience that wasn't buying the things advertised on Saturday mornings, which is why Animaniacs is winding down, Freakazoid is winding down,
right.
Pinky and the Brain is being rebooted with Elmira. Like, these are great shows, but they're not hitting the demographics their advertisers want, so they're all being assassinated.
Right, and like Saturday mornings are dying as it is. And on top of that, like Nelvana, I would guess, they're a third party doing this for the network, but the networks can buy it themselves if they want to and produce it themselves. And yeah, it's just the twilight of this era already. And soon enough, Pokemon is going to show up to like fully kill it.
I was actually looking at the Fox Saturday morning schedules, and yeah, in 98, they basically do a lot of Power Rangers and Power Rangers ripoffs, like the Mystic Knights of Tir na Nog or whatever.
Yeah, right.
The Irish Rangers. So that's 98, 99. 99, 2000, Digimon, anime, it's all coming. So there was no home for Sam and Max after this. They got in just as this was all ending.
Yeah, man. Oh, Digimon is like the cruelest of them all. Like, really, it's like we had a good time talking about Digimon on a What a Cartoon, but I do think it actually is a well written thing. But as far as like production values on the American side, it makes Pokemon look like it was a high budget union production. That's how cheap Digimon comes off.
Yeah, Fox was like, instead of paying Canadians to make a show, we can pay Saban to pay Canadians to dub a show.
Yes, Saban. Well, I mean, Chaim Saban is an expert at finding the cheapest way to take advantage of people. Like, he's really, really good at that.
And of course, Nelvana made this series, but we did a Nelvana bio on our Eek the Cat episode.
Yeah.
So check that out. I'm not going to go over it here. Canadian studio, very, very popular around this time period. They were in tight with Fox, doing a lot of things for Fox Kids Saturday mornings, like Eek the Cat and Dog City and this and probably a few other things. Clutter.
Right. Clutter, yeah.
Terrible Thunder Lizards. All part of the Eek family.
Clutter is such an amazing thing that it's like...
It's making fun of David Silverman?
No, David Silverman produces it, and it's
Okay.
making fun of the creator of Eek.
Okay,
yeah.
got it.
Bill Kopp. There's a character in it called Kopp who is an annoying iconoclast in it, but also it was they contractually could get 6 episodes out of the season 2 critic people, so they're like, well, what if they just made Clutter with Nelvana? So,
That's right. We went over this, but that's why it looked like a critic spinoff.
Yes.
It's like all the characters are very critic looking in that show, which confused me when I was like 15. I'm like, is this the critic? What's going on?
But we're all used to seeing the bear in the sky at the end of a Nelvana cartoon.
Yes, none of that filthy deek talk.
Ew.
So let's talk about who made the cartoon. Unfortunately, Nelvana did the syndicated special with the credits by making only one set of credits. This could have been different. For broadcast, I don't think it was, but on the DVDs, there is one set of credits for the entire season, and only the voice actors for Sam, Max, and the Geek are listed. So, not good. And so all I have are basically, well, thankfully, who wrote the episodes is credited on the episodes themselves, and the director as well, but that's about it.
I mean, that's a legal thing. Like, it started in the 80s. You have to credit director and writer up front. But other than that, though, even your storyboarders are like, nah, all 8 storyboarders for the whole season right here. It doesn't matter who did it.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, you can figure out. Do you care who storyboarded Act 2 of Bad Day on the Moon?
We wish we didn't even have to list them at all. Like, I love that about, in current Cartoon Network stuff, and not even just current, for years on Cartoon Network, they credit storyboarder right there with writer at the start of the cartoons. Like,
Yeah.
they're still doing that on Craig of the Creek. They did it with Steven Universe. Yeah.
And around this time, Warner is crediting individual storyboardists and things like that. They're doing a unique set of credits per episode, but Nelvana apparently is not.
These Canucks, not so.
No. So J.D. Smith, let's talk about him. He is the developer of the show, the executive producer, the showrunner, if you will. And he started at Nelvana roughly 20 years before this. So he's been there for a very long time,
cow.
which is probably why he's able to get this pet project off the ground. So he started at Nelvana on the art side of things. In 1980, he was an assistant animator on a special called Take Me Up to the Ball Game. And in 1983, he worked on Nelvana's cult film Rock and Rule.
Right. Yeah, I've not seen it. I've seen it. Was back when there were no adult animation at all. The rare times you got stuff like that or heavy metal, the people older than us remember those very well, and they're seen as mainly uninteresting to people of our age or younger.
I remember discovering in the early aughts Rock and Rule and knowing, like, there's another animated movie I've never heard of? Like, what the hell is this? So early in his career, also at Nelvana, he's making some real trash. He's supervising animator on the Care Bears movie, animation director on Care Bears movie 2, A New Generation.
Hey, that kept the lights on in Nelvana, they are crap. I'm sure someday we'll talk about Care Bears.
Oh, I really hope we don't. Do we have to?
I guess you're right.
I have no love for the Care Bears. I hated them growing up. They were so boring.
Well, it sounds like somebody didn't sleep in their bed with a Care Bear plush.
No, I didn't have that lion guy or... No, there were no Care Bears like merch in my house. I think my mom didn't like them either.
I get that. I mean, they are saccharine sweet, but I had one Care Bear, the Leonardo of the Care Bears, Tenderheart.
Are they all wearing diapers too?
No. That's just the Care Bear babies.
Okay.
So,
I'm thinking of the Create-A-Crittles.
well, so over time, the Care Bears start as their own thing, and then they're like, oh, well, we need a new. Every year they need a new line of toys. So then came the Care Bear cousins, who were animals other than bears. And then I believe when Muppet Babies was really big, they're like, well, we need some Care Bear babies who all wear diapers. So yeah, it's that's a short history of Care Bears.
I don't want to think about a bear in a diaper. So after Care Bears, J.D. Smith does some fun things some of the things I have seen. So J.D. Smith wrote the direct-to-video My Pet Monster movie.
I watched that 1,000,000 times as a kid. Yeah.
I saw it once, and the premise is weird because it's not about me and my pet monster. It's like, no, what if I became the monster?
I'm the monster.
Yeah.
It's so weird. The only thing I really remember is that it has a joke in the beginning about that the mom makes health smoothies that the boy doesn't want, and he pours it in like a plant in a planter to not drink it.
Take that, Mom.
Yeah.
So he wrote that. He also wrote some episodes of the live-action Nelvana show TNT, and yes, it stars Mr. T.
Oh, well, how do you like that?
Yes.
Wow.
So he moves on to become a story editor at Nelvana, which is basically a showrunner in the terms of kids TV animation of this era. It might still be the same, but it's different than story editor on a live action thing, which is typically the lowest rung of the writing staff.
When Simpsons uses story editor, they're using it in the live action sense too. But most TV animation in America, or I guess North America, story editor means the head writer of the room. Yeah.
And J.D. Smith is a big guy at the Babar Factory because he is story editor for most of the 65 episode order, and he writes an astonishing 17 episodes of Babar.
My God.
I recall I was living with my grandma. She had HBO. I recall watching Babar, not knowing if I enjoyed it or not, but it's like, this elephant fellow is rather amusing. Like, what was the deal with Babar?
Yeah, it was. I watched it whenever it was on because it was a cartoon, but yet. Every time I've looked back on it now, it seems like sort of a kidifying of French colonialism of Africa.
I think
what the plot
is.
Sounds like. Yeah,
I like the design though, but we're not talking about Babar anymore. There's no like edgy DreamWorks reboot of Babar.
Yeah, but I guess Christopher Robin's a colonialist too. He's a British colonialist instead of a French colonialist.
Don't like that.
Yeah.
So J.D. Smith then works on something much similar to Sam & Max, or more similar to Sam & Max. So there's a cartoon about Beetlejuice, right?
Oh, yeah.
It airs on 2 seasons of ABC Saturday mornings. And Fox Kids is like, we need to beef up our programming schedule. We were going to buy Tiny Toons. We're also buying Beetlejuice. So we all forget that Fox Kids took Tiny Toons away from syndication, but they also took Beetlejuice away from ABC. So ABC was doing like anemic episode orders of Beetlejuice, like 13 and 8 and 7. Fox is like, make us 65 Beetlejuices.
In addition to...
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
which is why there's like 100 episodes of Beetlejuice.
It's so much Beetlejuice. But,
yeah.
Just like we talked about with Ghostbusters, I definitely saw the Beetlejuice cartoon long before I saw the Beetlejuice movie.
I think I saw the cartoon because I liked the movie. I could be mixing this up, but J.D. Smith is story editor for most of this 65 episode block of Beetlejuice. He even writes a few. And as a kid, I loved the Beetlejuice cartoon so much. A friend and I played Beetlejuice and Lydia at the playground at school like every day for like years.
Cow. Wow.
We loved the cartoon that much. And as a kid, I remember like, oh man, I was watching the ABC Saturday mornings. I was like, I love this Beetlejuice cartoon. And then there was a magic moment in the fall of 91 where it felt like there was infinite Beetlejuice cartoons because ABC still had a new Saturday morning season and Fox was starting their daily new episodes for 13 weeks there was like 6 days a week of new Beetlejuice cartoons and then nothing.
And then that's when Beetlejuice was finally done with. Wow, man.
Yeah.
I watched Beetlejuice a lot on those on the Fox reruns, and then also a ton when it moved to Nickelodeon too, when Nickelodeon got the cable rights to it.
Oh, me too. Yeah. I have not gone back to it, but I have a lot of really fun memories of a fun, gross cartoon that does not play by the rules of the movie at all. And again, this has been said, but I'm shocked that a movie about a ghoul and his child bride becomes a kid's cartoon where they're best friends.
Erica, just a couple of pals going on adventures.
Yeah. Old BJ.
Old BJ, that's right.
So after this, J.D. Smith goes on to write a bunch of Dog City episodes. Do you remember Dog City? Dog City was one of the last things Jim Henson did. There was a live action pilot, but then the Dog City cartoon is intros of a puppet dog cartoonist talking about his characters than you see a bad cartoon.
Yeah, a crappier cartoon. Yeah, no, I remember it was on the same poster of like season 2 or the second year of Fox Kids that we had in our home. We put on the wall like, some freebie poster of like, I can just see Bobby from Bobby's World standing right next to the trench coat wearing dog man of Dog City.
I remember the 92 song that everyone knows it's on Fox.
Yeah.
Like, Dog City, X-Men 2, Mary Medley's Beetlejuice.
Yes, yeah. Everybody knows it's on Fox.
We're
It's on Fox.
disease.
Yeah, see?
Please, somebody help us. This sucks. Hey, we're both married. That worked out.
We're happily married.
No, I'm enjoying these memories. So yes, he writes a bunch of Dog City episodes. He adapts a bunch of the Tintin stories for Nelvana's cartoon. I didn't even know Tintin was a comic book until I was in my 20s. I love the Nelvana cartoon. That was on Nickelodeon for a bit too.
Man, I didn't watch that cartoon, though that same cool uncle did gift me as in reprints in English of the Tintin comics. Like, I didn't even realize like how special that was to get as a kid. By the way, that 3D animated Tintin movie that Spielberg directed is actually pretty good.
I want a version where they all have just dot eyes like in the famous comics.
That's unfortunate they don't do that, but it has an Indiana Jones level quality chase scene in it. Like, it's really, really good.
One of these days I'll watch it. So after Sam and Max, he lands a job as the head writer and showrunner of Nelvana's Tales from the Crypt Keeper, and that's a perfect show for this goosebumpsy area of kids' entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I noticed in kids' entertainment around this time that people slightly younger than us are nostalgic for was late 90s, a lot of Power Rangers show, but also a lot of like spooky shit for kids, like Goosebumps and Tales from the Crypt Keeper and other things like that. I think there was like an Erie, Indiana kind of thing going on too.
Addams Family got their own show. Yeah, I think Mutant Football League got a show. Like, the creepy crawlers era of kids stuff. Yeah.
We only had Are You Afraid of the Dark, and then everything had a happy ending.
Which also we didn't know was a bunch of Canadians either.
No, it's true. That's why we're like, not Ryan Reynolds, but the man from
Gosling.
No, the man from Fast and Furious who died.
Oh, Paul Walker.
He's in one of them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right too. Yeah.
Sorry to call him that, but I forgot his name.
The guy who died.
Yeah, the man who's not staying around and walking anymore. I apologize. So after this, he's a writer on story editor on a ton of Canadian things that I haven't heard of. You haven't either. I'm not going to go over them. No. But still credited on things as late as 2020. Which means he's been in the world of kids entertainment for 40 years. Which means he's probably about to retire.
Yeah. I'm shocked he's still at it, man. I mean, probably it probably pays your bills, but you don't get rich off of being a forever story editor on stuff at Nelvana.
I think he's doing fine. You don't have to get health insurance in Canada.
Oh, that's true. That probably saves you a few dollars.
They take care of their elderly. The director of all 13 episodes is Steve Whitehouse. I don't know how Nelvana does things. He could be the supervising director for the series, but with every written by credit, he is the directed by credit. So yeah.
That'd be my uninformed guess too, that it's just series director gets just episode director credit, and that's how their system works. Yeah.
And he started as a layout artist on the 1985 For Better or For Worse TV special, one of 2 or 3, which is very Canadian.
It's so Canadian, yeah. I read For Better or Worse as a kid, and I didn't realize it was set in Canada until I watched those cartoons.
They started getting out their loonies and their toonies, and you're like, what is this?
Proudly Canadian, probably because they got some subsidies for it as well.
Hey, this show was made with a generous grant from the Canadian Arts Council or something like that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
We should. It's people can mock that, but I wish America did that more.
Funded anything of value.
Yeah.
So yes, Steve Whitehouse, not just a Nelvana boy, he found himself in the world of Deke. He was an animation supervisor, maybe an overseas one, on the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, where he's credited as Steve Casablanca.
What?
So maybe he knew it was shit.
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe at the time he was like, my union doesn't want me doing my name on this one. I don't know. Steve. Wow, that's funny.
And he also worked for Klasky Chupo. He was overseas animation director on season 1 of Duckman.
Okay, so this then definitely sounds like a guy who, for a time, lived in Korea to oversee this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And he only ever directed on Sam and Max, but he was assistant director on a lot of Beetlejuice and also on Dog City. So he was working his way up. Maybe he directed 13 of these and was like, no more. I'll go back to storyboarding, please. Don't make me direct anymore.
And it sounds like him and J.D. White then did a lot of stuff together. Yeah.
Yeah. And after Sam and Max, Steve mostly stuck to storyboarding. His most recent credits are in the 2017 show called Three Amigonauts.
Okay. Man.
Yeah.
It's shocking to me just how much Canadian cartoons exist that I was completely unaware of.
There's a lot. They've got an entire YTV station, the Youth Network. Okay, let's talk about the voice actors, both of them that are credited.
Right.
So Harvey Atkin as Sam. So he's a very Canadian actor who's done plenty of work in cartoons before. We all know him as King Koopa.
Yes, I love his part as Sam, but I can't not hear King Koopa when he talks.
With this viewing, I was able to remove myself from that connection. In 97, I could not. They're like, King Koopa's Sam, what's happening here? And very distracting me at first, of course. He's now Bowser, King Koopa, but we called him King Koopa back then, and it's just why everything he said had the Koop pun in it.
Yeah, I mean, they were just going by the official stuff at the time. Same with Princess Toadstool. Like, these are the names, kids today, well, actually, maybe now thanks to the Sonic movies, he's Robotnik again, but for, over 20 years in America, he had only been Eggman. Like the name changes stick in some cases.
Japan lost that fight.
Yeah.
So Harvey Atkin passed away in 2017 at 74. His most notable role is probably Cagney and Lacey, a forgotten show about female detectives, but it lasted for like 8 seasons. He plays Desk Sergeant Ronald Coleman in almost every episode.
Oh, okay, man. he is King Koopa to me forever.
Yeah.
It's just the growl in his voice is great as a jerk, but also works as the overly friendly Sam in this show.
Yes, and if you look him up, you most likely will see a picture from the 1979 movie Meatballs, where he is second billed under Bill Murray.
What?
It's like Bill Murray, Harvey Atkin, Meatballs.
Holy crap.
A very Canadian movie. Meatballs, I've never seen it. It's like a summer camp movie. It launches the movie careers of both Bill Murray and Ivan Reitman. And it's basically the second movie Harold Ramis writes after Animal House.
How do you like that?
Yeah.
I never watched it. Based on the poster art for it, I always assumed it was some sort of Porky-style sex romp. There at least have to be some boobs in it somewhere.
And Bill Murray looking 40 in his late 20s, probably.
The hair already creeping back pretty far in that one. Yeah.
I think this could be my favorite Sam. I would not have said that 10 years ago, but listening to this now, I think so. First Sam is Bill Farmer in the first game.
Right.
He's really doing a Humphrey Bogart, which is good, but it's a bit distracting. And the Telltale guy is doing a version of Bill Farmer, but I like the more chipper, gregarious Sam in this. And I think it fits the character more. The King Koopa thing was distracting to me, but I think this could be my favorite Sam. But nobody sounds like Harvey Atkin.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels natural to his voice, and he's not really doing an impression. I mean, him, like, in this episode saying, like, refreshes my southern regions. Like, yeah, just he's very funny, but yeah, his Canadian way of speaking just drips through every line.
Yeah. Max feels less Canadian to me.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it's Robert Tinkler as Max. This is actually one of
the Tinkler.
That's right. With a name like that, you have to become a voice actor. So it's one of his earliest roles. He'd actually done some Canadian voice acting before, including the voice of Rubius in the original Sailor Moon dub. He's like a twinky, red-haired alien guy. There's a billion of those in Sailor Moon, but he played Rubius.
That covers a lot of characters in Sailor Moon, yes.
And this is the first time he ever played a title character. He's in his early 20s here. I really like this Max as well. I don't know if it's my favorite, but the first Max is actually Nick Jameson from The Critic and other things.
Cool.
But he's doing there's a bit of like a New York lilt to his voice. It's a bit like Al Pacino, Harvey Keitel to the high pitchedness, and I like that this is just like a nondescript accent Max. It's just like gregarious, boisterous, but just like flat accents.
Yes, yeah. I when I saw this the first time, I thought, this sounds more like the Max I had in my head when reading the comic, of just that the way he would just flatly state things, but in an excited way. Like, because when I would read things like, none of your damn business, Sam, I always read it as, not as like angry or as the front. He's like, none of your damn business. No, he was like, none of your damn business, Sam. But if you want me to write but if you want to find out, I'll write it a note for you, and you can read it when you're sitting down. Like, just that you need to say it kind of flat delivery. I like that.
And I guess we have not really discussed this yet, which is it's a good time to do it now. But part of the appeal, or like basically the whole appeal for me, is it's fun to watch them interact with each other because A, they've got very positive attitudes despite the horrible things they're doing or part of. And B, they are such good friends with each other, even though Sam abuses Max sometimes. But I love, most episodes end with him saying, "You crack me up, little buddy." But they like being around each other, and that's a fun dynamic. And they're always on the same page with each other. And this one we'll talk about is like dealing with the death of Max, kind of.
Yeah. The relationship between Sam and Max is always cute and fun. It does have the feel of like brothers who mostly like each other, but who are like goofing around, and they're always funny. Like they, Sam can be just a little disappointed in Max, or Max can be a little frustrated with Sam, but mainly I just love how many times conversations are just Sam explaining a thing to Max and then Max reacting with like a funny big reaction to it. It's so fun.
Or if Max says something crazy, Sam will be like, "I don't think so, Max," but and then he'll just say, another suggestion. Like they're both very supportive of each other. They're both very chipper, and they're both like unflappable no matter what happens. Like the cartoon kind of has to change them to make them more dynamic, in which they can be afraid or angry, but normally the affect of Sam and Max is just very chipper and flat sometimes, but never like to either extreme of the emotional range.
Yeah, it's true. They do have to get like scared of something sometimes in the stories. Yeah.
But back to the old Tinkler. He's very busy as a voice actor. He's credited with 175 projects over the past 30 years. He's still doing anime dubs, but notably, he has been the voice of Woodstock in all Snoopy things since 2019 Snoopy in Space.
Wow, man, that's quite a good gig to get.
And I think the Telltale voice actor, and there's been a few of them, I think they are patterning their Max after this one, which is a good move. Like, I don't think Nick Jameson's voice was right, although it was fine for that being the first one, and Bill Farmer was doing his own thing, but I like where they are here in this series.
Yeah, the clips from the Telltale one that I've seen, I didn't listen that closely. I almost thought for a time that, they got back the guy from the Nelvana one, just because it sounded similar and in a good way.
So let's talk about Sam and Max after the cartoon, where they have been. So if you go on the bonus disc, I'm sure it's online somewhere as well, there is a 2001 web cartoon that's one episode, no dialogue, and it's not very good. And it was one of those things where it's like, your favorite characters are back, the critic is back, and then you're like, no, not like this, please, no. And then they didn't come back again in that form. That was not the future of animation. The future of animation was making things that cheap, but for television.
Yeah, it was what people thought the promise of South Park would be, of like, well, if South Park can do this on TV, we can do it as like webisodes, like with all this computer stuff. Yeah, we're in the near future, we're going to be doing a Simpsons episode entirely about that era of animation.
And the cartoon is basically Sam and Max doing an alien autopsy, and there's some fun gags in there, but it's like, this could just be a comic, and it's got as many frames of animation as a comic too.
Honestly, probably fewer.
Yeah. So LucasArts was working on a sequel to the original adventure game, and it was canceled in 2004. From what I hear, it was nearly finished, and there's a trailer online with the voice of Bill Farmer again as Sam, and there is a different Max, and it might be Tinkler, I can't tell, but it's not Nick Jameson. So presumably there's an entire voice track with Bill Farmer and this other guy and other voice actors for this whole adventure game that never got finished.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
And it's nuts that it hasn't surfaced more since then, man.
If I met Bill Farmer, I would not talk about Goofy. I'd be like, I love Sam. He'd be like, who?
Yeah, he's
What's your name? I'm like, no, do the Sam voice.
Yeah, do the Sam
what are you
voice.
talking about, Sam?
Okay, I'll pull it up on my phone.
Yes.
I'll play it back for you.
Yeah, just do Bogey. That's all you got to do.
He's Bill Farmer. I met him once in a convention setting. He was very, very nice.
Mm-hmm. And yes, there was a Telltale adventure game series. Hey, folks, remember Telltale? Mm-hmm. Well, they made things before The Walking Dead, and most of the things they made were reboots of LucasArts things, and this was one of them. So
yeah, it's a real pre and post Walking Dead for Telltale. They got too big for their britches.
Yes, and I loved Walking Dead, the first season, but then they made everything in that style, and then they they bought too many expensive licenses, and a lot of them they never actually made into games, like Stranger Things.
Yeah, that one they bought too. I mean, yeah, it's crazy that like Walking Dead made them so much money that they could have paid for like dozens of seasons of Strong Bad with that, but they're like, no, we got to keep getting bigger, so we got to spend the money on a giant Marvel license, a giant Batman license. But I think they didn't realize that, even with the success of Walking Dead or Minecraft, but in all those cases with the success they had, they could only get so big with their style of video game. And I think their Minecraft series only got really successful when it became a choose your own adventure like Netflix thing.
I forgot about that. Yeah. So I mean, before they got very popular, they're making these, and they're very, very good. There's 3 seasons of episodic games. They're thoroughly modern. They cut out a lot of the adventure game pains of the past. They're all like 3 to 4 hours long, and they're fantastic. And the first 2 seasons were remastered within the past few years by the people who made them, and those are amazing collections, very playable, and they're on every platform. Please check them out. They are very good adventure games and very funny, and they nail the look of the world and the dialogue of the characters.
I have the original series in my Steam library. I have not played it.
Don't play those. Play the remasters.
I'm going to play the remasters.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're on every platform.
Okay.
Every platform imaginable.
So I can get achievements in Xbox?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's all that
Okay.
matters,
Yeah.
isn't it? But yes, those are great. And I have a Retronauts episode interviewing the developers of the original games upon the release of the first collection.
That's great.
And that's where Steve Purcell won his Eisner, because for the reboot of Sam & Max, he made a comic called The Big Sleep, a digital comic with some moving parts. It was part of the motion comic boom. Glad that's over with.
Yes.
But he won an Eisner in 2008, right before my wife won one.
That's great.
So my wife
Wow.
and Steve Purcell, same amount of Eisners.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm sad it took that long for him to, but I guess he wasn't really publishing that many comics, so he didn't get many chances at bat, I suppose.
No,
Yeah.
that Sam & Max comic was the first new full-length comic for like in maybe like 13 or 14 years. If you don't count the Adventurer comics and stuff, if you just count single issue releases, it's like 92 and then 2005.
Boy, that is a long time. Yeah.
And then between 2010 and 2020, nothing. I mean, Steve Purcell will do some Sam & Max art, but then 2020 is the remaster of the first Telltale season. 2021 is the remaster of the second Telltale season. 2021 is also the release of the virtual reality game Sam & Max. This time it's virtual. And I have played most of this. Before I ate Thanksgiving dinner, I put on my VR headset. I strapped in. Things in VR easily spook me. And I love seeing Sam & Max, and I'm used to seeing them. But when Sam's as big as you, your brain is like, he's going to eat you. Be afraid. So it took me a bit to get used to having a Sam as tall as me in my face. Now, Max is below me. I can get used to that, but he does jump in your face a lot.
Oh, gee, wow.
But yeah, it's basically, it's got adventure game stuff, but it's really like a series of mini games, but they're fun. And it's like part of an investigation you're doing, or part of like training to be part of the freelance police. It's very cool that they did a new Sam & Max thing 11 years after the last Telltale game.
Man, that is really cool. They put it on PlayStation VR. I think I'll give that a shot. I've barely played VR. We have a PlayStation VR headset, and the first version of it, I ain't paying $500 for that new version. But yeah, for me, after 15 minutes of VR, it is like too much. Like when I pull off the helmet, I'm like, oh my god, okay, I'm alive again. It is too disorienting.
Yeah, I did about an hour, and that was too much because my face hurts after. I have an Oculus, by the way. Oh, it's called Oculus Meta. No, sorry, it's called Meta now.
Yeah.
I had to change all my branding on my machine and set up a new account and everything, and get a new
Barf.
mobile app because of Mark Zuckerberg's twisted fantasy to make us forget that Facebook poisoned everyone's brain.
Yeah, poison everyone's brain. And but hey, when they sell everybody a worse version of Wii Sports, it's going to really save that company.
Hey, Sam & Max had legs in my game. They didn't need Mark Zuckerberg. Legs are coming, people. Please, we're working on the legs. But yeah, that came out in 2021, and since then, nothing. But Steve Purcell, he's only 61. We demand more Sam & Max. And Steve, we know you're listening, and you probably aren't, but if you are, you have to re-release the comics.
Yes,
you can do it.
please.
Just put the scans online, sell the PDF, or give it away for free. these need to be available because otherwise people are just going to go to readcomics.russia and get viruses while reading Sam and Max.
You don't want that, do you, Steve? Like, hey, come on. Well,
no.
Look, I'm sure we still live in this within an hour drive of you. We'll come and meet you. We'll talk about this in person.
And I mean, he's at Pixar. And he's jokingly answered the question like, yeah, we're not going to make a Sam and Max movie. That's not appropriate for Pixar. Listen, Pixar, you need to stop making movies about parents, apologizing. Stop making movies about generational trauma and like about like dead baby ghosts or whatever. We need one Freelance Police movie. That's all I ask for you. And make it PG-13. Do something interesting.
Well, they're not going to, I don't think that's coming, but what you would at least hope there'd be a short at some point, like hasn't Purcell given them enough that they can at least give him a short? Like, it doesn't have to be a theatrical short for their Oscar position, a Disney Plus short. But Disney wouldn't do it because he'd have to sell the rights to them. They wouldn't do it licensed. No
Maybe
way.
That's why you can't make it happen. Like, no, if we make a Sam and Max movie or anything, you can't own the characters anymore. He just says no. So I mean, people at Pixar, there's tons of people younger than 60 at Pixar. I bet they are hounding him every fucking day. Like, draw me Sam and Max, sign my CD-ROM. Can we get on board with the Sam and Max thing? And I'm sure he's just like, they'll never approve it. But man, what a dream that would be.
It's man, all the money he's made for them, they still can't do it. But yeah, it's too bad. But at the very least, I want to see more of his drawings of Sam and Max. It doesn't make him, I would think, even 10% of what his Pixar money is. But
no, he's got to be a Pixar multimillionaire. He's living amongst us. I know what he looks like now, so if I see him at Trader Joe's, I'm going to hunt him down and demand things, or at least just get an autograph or a drawing or something on my phone.
Man, the home he bought here 30 years ago has to be worth like $80 million or something.
Yes, he could sell that and make more than he ever made at Pixar, being a senior creative fellow or whatever. But yeah, that is the story of Sam and Max. I have such affinity for these characters, and I'm glad to see them wherever they may go. And I do like the Fox series. If you start watching it, it does get better. By the end, I feel like they really figured it out, but then there's no more.
Yeah. With the last episode that they call the last episode, because I would guess they felt pretty sure it wasn't going to get renewed then either.
I think they saw the writing on the wall. Like, this takes too long. Fox wants more Power Rangers, and we can't do that.
Nope.
But thanks for listening to The History, folks. We'll see you on the other side for our discussion of Christmas, Bloody Christmas, and Bad Day on the Moon.
Go cruising with the new Fox Kids cars.
Sam and Max, looking and digging just to get the facts. Sam is a dog and I'm looking so cool. Max is there trying to play the fool. Coming on a plan that is coming their way. See a lot of people as them stop and say, Sam and Max, looking and digging just to get the facts.
Sam and Max Freelance Police series premiere Saturday at 10:30 on Fox Kids.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the break for Sam and Max Freelance Police. I'm one of your hosts, Bob Mackey, and I've got another idiotic and baffling assignment for our listeners. But first, who is here with me today, as always?
Hey, it's fellow lagomorph lover, Henry Gilbert.
And yes, welcome to the break. Thanks for listening. And by the way, we want to tell you about what's happening at the Talking Simpsons Network. If you enjoyed this show, want to hear more like it, want to hear episodes about things like King of the Hill and Futurama and so many other podcasts, please head on over to patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. Sign up at the $5 level. You get early access to all of our podcasts and access to nearly 6 years worth of full-length miniseries episodes covering the shows I just mentioned, and also monthly access to new episodes of Talking Futurama, Talking of the Hill, and our newest miniseries, Blabbing About Batman Season 2, which is rolling out through the end of 2022. There is so much happening. There's over 100 bonus episodes and so much more to come in the future, only for patrons at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. And that is the $5 level, but there is a $10 level too. And when you sign up for that $10 level, you can access one extremely long podcast once a month month, only for patrons of that level or higher. And what is that, Henry?
Bob is talking about the What a Cartoon Movie podcast, where we cover an animated feature film super in-depth, just like we do Sam and Max Freelance Police. Just like how this is our holiday episode of What a Cartoon podcast, we are doing another holiday-themed movie for What a Cartoon Movie, Tokyo Godfathers, the Satoshi Kon classic from 2003. We are going to have a ton of fun digging into that seasonally appropriate film. Last month, we did our first ever Leica film, Paranorman, and that was so much fun to talk about. You got to hear the free preview of it in this feed last week, but you need to hear the full thing over 5 hours. And we have 4 years worth of What a Cartoon movies to hear us talk about. Things from the Disney Renaissance, things from Studio Ghibli, just last year, like Beavis and Butthead Do the Universe, and so much more. Everything from Akira to a Goofy movie, as I love to say. Check it out for yourself, along with all the $5 things you'd also get that Bob just mentioned at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons.
And if you've never signed up for Patreon before, it is very easy to do that. And once you sign up, you're given a code. You can just drop that code into whatever you use to listen to podcasts, and that way you can download all of our bonus podcasts alongside your free podcast as part of your podcasting lifestyle. And there is a Patreon app for any smart device you might have that works extremely well too. No matter what way you do it, it's so easy to access all the bonus content waiting for you at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. That's it for this break. Now let's get back to talking about the only cops that we like, Sam and Max. So we're back to talk about the Christmas episode. By the way, this is our Christmas What a Cartoon. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, or whatever. It's loosely Christmas related. I just wanted to do the Sam and Max episode before I forgot I wanted to do it.
I mean, Christmas Bloody Christmas is a great episode.
Yes,
and, full of great Christmas comedy. I also want to say, I do not own the DVDs like Bob, and though I didn't even need to pull up Tubi to watch these, because I got to say, mad respect to the person who uploaded the digital versions of these episodes to YouTube in 2008. They look very good for 2008 uploads, and they are still up. They have not been, they still have the upload date of 2008.
I'm sure Steve Purcell doesn't care. And yeah, this is so available if you want to watch it. You don't need the Shout Factory DVDs.
It's they're like, oh, you want to keep it? You want to upload it? We don't care. If you feel like watching this for free, we're just happy you remember.
And like all Sam and Max episodes, this one has a cold open. In this case, it's a very cold open rim shot, because we zoom in on this Christmas card that says Christmas Bloody Christmas. It opens. We're in this snow-covered cabin where Sam and Max reside, and they're having a cozy Christmas in this cold open.
You know, Sam, Christmas with your granny has never been better. Each year I wish it would get better, but it never does.
That's all gonna change tonight, Max.
Do tell.
Instead of hunkering down to view the requisite gush of holiday classics on TV, Granny has planned a special Christmas Eve excursion.
Oh boy, it's the mothership calling me home to my people.
My guess is it's a surprise holiday ambush, Max. You draw their fire with some of your endearing antics while I hustle Granny down to the cellar where she'll be safe behind a bunker wall of homemade preserves.
Suit up, boys. We're moving out.
So yes, just like John Arbuckle, Sam has a rock and roll grandma.
That's right.
And I think this is her first appearance of Grandma Ruth, which becomes a character in Steve Purcell's arts. For Thanksgiving, which was yesterday, this is recording, the Sam and Max account, run by just some person, retweeted like a Thanksgiving picture of like, it's a parody of the Rockwell like carving the turkey picture with the family all around, and Grandma Ruth is there next to Max, and she's got like tattoos on her arms and stuff. So Steve Purcell has incorporated her into future art, although there were no like real future comics after this except for the Telltale stuff.
I love that she's just Sam with a wig and glasses on. Like, she's the exact same character model. And man, yeah, the second this started, I was like, oh right, the writing in this is right there with the comics. Like these lines of like watching the requisite gush of
Yes.
holiday programming.
I wrote down requisite gush.
Yeah, requisite gush.
And yes, this is written by Steve Purcell, so I chose this one for that reason too, because I think he's doing revisions on all the dialogue, but I just, the patter is perfect, and it's always like Sam explaining things to Max, like, well, Max, this is happening, and then go get yourself killed while this
so
other
great.
event happens.
And man, he says like with your endearing antics, and then that he's going to barricade her behind a bunch of homemade preserves, like all of this. I have to give credit, though, to the timers on this, because this had to be a timer's nightmare. This wall of text these characters have to say while doing action in real time. How do you time that out?
Yeah, and the voice actors too. No, faster.
Yeah, this scene can't be more than 5 seconds. You have to say, yeah. Hey, the Tinkler and Atkins, they are doing great jobs just on the speed of delivery of intentionally verbose, like thesaurus set of words in this.
And they usually just have the same affect for every line reading, which is just like, again, gregarious, chipper, unflappable. There's just so much fun to hear like talk to each other.
I love the smile in his voice of saying, each year I wish it would get better, but it never does. Like a different direction, that would be seen as like somebody being like intentionally like sarcastic in a snide way, but this is him with a smile on his face that he kind of means it. He's like, yeah, each year I wish it would get better, but it never does. It's so good.
I love their attitudes. And then we get the spirited opening sequence. It's made in the style of the 93 adventure game opening, which is like different like panels sliding in showing you different things they're doing, but the opening shot is of the Surfing the Highway cover but animated.
I love that. It's my favorite animation of the whole show. I mean, because it's the opening, it is done on a higher budget than the rest of the show, so of course it's going to look better. But yeah, just the Surfing the Highway shot done in full motion, I love it so much. And I love the opening song. It took me to like 4 watchings of it this time to be like, oh right, a phone is ringing through the whole thing.
Yeah, only upon taking these notes I'm like, oh, the entire thing is about just different actions are happening with Sam and Max, but then you see a panel of a phone ringing sliding up, and the phone is ringing throughout the entire opening, but then at the end, Sam answers the phone, because a lot of the episodes open with them fighting over who gets to answer the phone. But like, I love the staging of Sam bent over the desk, and he has Max pinned to the wall behind him with his giant bare foot.
Oh God, I always love that. Again, that is what makes them feel, perhaps this is just me projecting onto it because of my personal background with Sam and Max, but it feels like two brothers fighting over something. Like, I'm gonna answer the phone. No me. And the older brother wins because he physically is bigger than the little brother,
despite the little brother's energy.
Yeah.
And yeah, the opening shot. I feel like some of this was probably done internally. Like the Beetlejuice series, I do love, but if you're gonna watch any of it, just watch the opening. All done internally at Nelvana. It's some of the best TV animation ever made. Period.
Yes.
It is so good. It's not, I mean, this is not as good as that, but the opening like 5-frame loop of them like surfing on the front of the DeSoto, it's perfect. It's so perfect.
Or the shot of them that's in the episode, the second one, of them driving on the moon with their paper bags, the way the paper bags like undulate and move in a realistic fashion.
Yeah. And the opening shot again with the car, I keep going back to it, but the license plate says SRP 95, which is what it says on the cover of Surfing the Highway, because it's Steve Purcell 95. But the R stands for Rasputin.
Oh.
That's not his middle name, but he thought
see.
R looked like a better initial when he signed things.
That's cute.
So,
wow, I
yeah.
didn't know that. Wow, and then they keep it even down to that. That is a impressive level of respect for a thing they don't own the rights to. They are licensing.
Yes, I'm sure Steve Purcell was cracking the whip on making all these changes the right way. So we open on Granny's helicopter framed against the moon. We cut to inside where Sam and Max are now in holiday costumes, and they're in these for the entire segment. I love Sam's kind of like, they're both kind of like elf-like, but then Max has a hat on his head and then hats on his ears, and they're always jingling throughout the entire episode.
That he has a separate hat for each ear is so great. Yes, I love his design. And also when they showed the shot of all the prisoners in the photo with Granny, like one of the still images of the show feels like a Purcell drawing that's just like dense with weird with weird characters all over the place.
Yeah, I think this is like an early digital show, and I wish it wasn't, because
a
lot of these detail pack scenes, the low res digital animation really can't sustain them. There's like a lot of close ups where they're zoomed in on a low res image and they pull pull back from it, it doesn't look that great.
Yeah, though I would guess Nelvana was ahead of the curve on a lot of digital animation, just mainly out of budget stuff too.
So yeah, they're in the helicopter, and like you said, Henry, there's a picture taped up, and it shows that Grandma was a warden on the Blood Island Maximum Security Penitentiary, and Max remarks that like turning her unprotected back to them like that really shows that she has some gumption or whatever.
Yeah, says a lot.
It says a lot. Yeah.
No, I love to the I had to tell myself when doing notes here, I was like, you can't write down every quote. Like,
yeah.
But I also love that this cartoon starts with like basically 15 seconds of what looks like an actual Christmas episode of something, and then instantly a rockin' grandma shows up to put them in a helicopter to take them to a prison.
Yes, we celebrate Christmas in Alcatraz basically, and yeah, Sam tells Max her nickname, the Iron Maiden. So Max immediately takes to calling Granny I Am.
That's so Max, isn't it, man? Like, so I Am, what's the plan? Like, yeah.
And we heard about Max's misgivings. It's a very dark joke about how the prisoners will eat him alive, and Sam says they'll keep you alive for some time, little buddy.
I know, yeah. I mean, now as an adult, I'm like, yeah, what are they keeping him alive for? Kind of.
The clean version is they're going to torture you and then murder you.
Yeah, that's as clean as it gets in this.
The helicopter lands, the inmates swarm it, and the new warden stops the guard from shooting them. and he remarks, "They love that old girl."
That's so sweet. Yeah, the way how excited the prisoners are to see her, and the way she waves with all the other with Sam and Max right behind her.
And we see some criminals grumbling about their presence. I will say, like, most of the designs are very Steve Purcell-y, but these two, like, not the Hans Gruber guy, but his two sidekicks are very Nelvana stock, like, Eek the Cat background characters.
Yeah, they're straight out. You know, though, Herzog, maybe it's just his crooked neck at times. He reads to me like a Spumco man.
He does look a bit like a who am I thinking of? Kirk Douglas style character.
Yeah. He definitely feels like from this. I'm not saying that like Spumco people, though. Certainly there is a Canadian aesthetic to both. Yeah,
for sure. John K. Canadian.
Yeah.
So yes,
disowned by that country by this point.
Oh, absolutely. This Hans Gruber type, we'll find out his name is Herzog, says Granny could provide the distraction they need, and he remarks, "Christmas has truly come early this year."
See, they were doing a Die Hard parody thing before it was cool.
Yeah, now this is all old hat. You have to remind yourself, this is 97.
Yes, yeah.
We're not talking about Die Hard being a Christmas movie in 97.
Yeah, we're all like, God, a third Die Hard movie? Running out of ideas, Hollywood. That's what we thought.
With a vengeance? So we cut to this long line of prisoners waiting to see Mrs. Claus. There are signs in the background. They say, "Repent and reform." Max does not care for these prisoners. He calls them self-propelled human refuse.
What an amazing, yeah. I mean, it's so obviously, you know, as bleeding heart lefties, we don't like all of this dehumanization of prisoners, but darn, it's funny hearing self-propelled piles of human refuse.
Sam is slightly kinder and reminds the inmates there are some anxious lifers that want to see Mrs. Claus.
I just love the way Sam addresses a giant cannibal is just like, "Hey, what about you, little tyke?"
It's like, how do you do a Silence of the Lambs joke for kids? Well, you change Chianti to seltzer, and that's all you do.
It's actually funny. This episode and the next one have a replacement of alcohol with a lightning of it. Though,
oh, right.
Though now seltzer, I only think of alcoholic seltzer now.
Me too. He's talking about White Claw. He ate his parole officer with White Claw. So this is when we meet Herzog, who wants to see Mrs. Claus next.
Season's greetings, dear Granny Root.
A pack of chocolate cigs says this guy's glaringly absent from Santa's nice list.
Can't say I'm pleased to bump into you, Herzog. Imagine, 43 escape attempts? Oh, I call myself a forgiving woman, but mercy me, I have my limits. And I know you. A leopard doesn't change its shorts.
Oh, but I have changed, Granny. You'll never know how sorry I am for all the grief I once caused you.
Oh, what do you say, Granny? Forgiveness is the greatest gift.
Besides sock monkeys and chattering teeth.
Well, it is Christmas. Oh!
We get jokes about heavy fruitcakes.
Yes, yeah.
I am 40 years old. Never in my life have I seen a fruitcake in someone's home. I've seen them in stores, of course, and I think about all the jokes. Never have I eaten a fruitcake. But the joke about the heavy fruitcake, like a perennial boomer, yuck 'em up.
Yes, yeah. I mean, people growing up like Purcell had to eat bad fruitcake all of the time, especially like store-bought fruitcake. But let me tell you, my mommy makes a good fruitcake. And I said that ironically, the mommy here, guys. That was not earnest. But
Why not regular cake?
look, she makes that too at times. But for the holidays, I mean, honestly, when I visit her at the end of December, if I'll be a little sad if she hasn't made some more of her fruitcake. I mean,
You hear that, Mom? Get to work.
well, I'll say I came to appreciate fruitcake more as an adult because adult fruitcake is an edible sponge of rum. That's what it really is. And,
I say cut out the middleman. Just drink the rum.
but then I couldn't have like old raisins in it. Like, come on.
Have a bowl of old raisins next to you. Or just sprinkle them into the rum drink.
But yeah, it was funny the last time I visited because she had made a fruitcake that my stepdad was like, it's okay. Like he wasn't as into it. Like, well, I'll just eat it all then if you're not gonna have it, stepdad.
It is heavy though.
Oh yes, yeah. Well, she makes a way better one than this. But the way they set up the unbreakable fruitcake, I guess. What did Earthworm Jim? They did a fruitcake thing too in their Christmas episode, didn't they?
I'm sure. I like this.
Yeah.
This maybe until like 2013, there were still fruitcake jokes and things.
Yeah, I guess. Well, actually, that's in a whole episode of Retronauts we did, wasn't it? Yeah,
Was it? Oh yeah, we did the Earthworm Jim Christmas special.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, good
This and
times.
Earthworm Jim are kind of on the same level of humor and animation. I think this is a little better than Earthworm Jim.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, pretty close. But
Yeah.
yeah.
It doesn't have a problematic creator though.
Fortunately, yeah.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, just look to that one jerk, and then it makes you appreciate Steve Purcell even more for staying normal and not crazy.
If he has opinions, they're keeping them to himself. Right?
Yeah. Say, hey, if he's lived here this long, I
Oh.
feel like he couldn't be that bad. That
Absolutely,
reactionary.
that makes
Yeah.
sense. So yeah, the fruitcake is the undoing of this Alcatraz style setup because Herzog is given this cake. It crushes his hands. He looks over to the two goons. One's like punching a baseball mitt. The other's miming a bat swinging. So Herzog throws it to the catcher guy, who throws it at the batter guy. He's not a bat, but he picks up Max, whose face is unmoving, and
So
just
great.
hits the cake with Max into the power switch, and it turns everything off. And it's slightly like the adventure game because you can use Max as an item in that game.
I love the no change in facial expression that Max has when used as a bat. He's not crying about it. He doesn't say later, hey, don't use me like that. Like it's just like in the comics, like a one frame joke. It's so good.
And yes, even though this is a dangerous situation, Sam is still kind of lighthearted about being locked up with violent offenders in a total blackout. And Max says, "Don't be such a fussy pants."
And he blows out the candle just in time for a commercial break.
Yeah. And we open with a rat eating a candy cane. By the way, rats and roaches are a big thing in Purcell stuff because
He loves drawing them.
Purcell had a pet rat growing up, I think, and that's why rats are so present in Sam and Max things.
I see.
They'll be like the next one we do is like nothing but rats and roaches.
Yes, yeah, it's Rats and Roachapalooza. Now I always love when I can see another rat doing something, and this time a rat eating a candy cane is great.
And Granny is leading the way, assuring them she knows this place like the liver spots on the back of her hand.
This is turning into The Rock now, and she's Sean Connery.
Yes,
Yeah.
we don't make jokes about liver spots anymore because we don't call them that anymore. They're just age spots or sunspots. And I was like, why did we ever call them liver spots? And it's because they were once thought to be a symptom of a malfunctioning liver. But
I
now we know
see.
it's like, no, the sun, the way it ages all of us, that's what it does to your skin, the back of your hands and stuff.
So that's why it's related to why people are called lily livered or whatever. Just people like,
Yeah.
it all comes from your liver.
It's a condition of the humors. So I love this perspective. Granny says they need to stop Herzog and his insane grab for freedom.
That's a great line. Yes.
But they don't know his next move. Max has an idea. He salutes Granny and requests permission to crawl back into her good books. And then he knocks on a few bricks to see where the cell is he's looking for, listens intently, then punches through the wall, pulls one of Herzog's goons through the tiny hole. Granny starts interrogating the guy, but Max is begging to crawl it on his throat. He's even like opened his mouth and is about to step into it.
I know that also felt like such a comic book panel gag to me. Yeah, I love that. And she's like, maybe later. Like, she's not telling him not to do it, but he's got to tell them something first. It can't happen right now.
Yes, Granny gently lets him down, and then she interrogates this giant goon.
I know your dear old mother, Jakes. I don't think she'd be pleased to hear you've been back-talking Granny Ruth.
Hello, Mrs. Jakes? It's about your boy.
Okay. Herzog had us round up the guards while he heads upstairs. He's gonna take the warden hostage. Oh, please don't tell my mommy.
That'll do.
Now there's a move every parent should know at bedtime.
It's an old trick I learned in the Merchant Marines. Saved my hash in Korea once or twice.
She basically does the Vulcan death pinch. And also, save my hash. This is why I watch Sam and Max and play the games and read the comics. All these fun phrases that you'd be beaten if you said this in the streets.
Yeah.
And actually, I like when Max remarks on Sam's weird verbiage and language. Like, I can't believe he just said this. Or like, please don't say that again.
Yes. Yeah. I love when he points that out. I also love him... Max saying that, like, oh, you should, if only you could knock out children with a nerve pinch whenever you feel like it.
So she was in the Merchant Marines in Korea.
Yeah.
It was fun to put, like, cartoon characters in real wars around this time.
Yeah, especially the Forgotten War of Korea, too. That's so, to hear an old person say, like, did this in Korea, like, that's funnier than if they said, I did this in the Pacific Theater or whatever. I learned this, like, it's a Korea reference funnier than a World War II reference.
The more obscure, the better.
Yeah.
And it works for wars, too.
Yeah. And hey, if you want to learn about the Korean War, listen to our friends at Blowback Season 3.
Or watch 11 seasons of MASH.
Yeah, I think you'll learn more from Blowback Season 3, though.
More quips than MASH, though. Although I recommend Blowback as well.
Yeah.
So it's becoming very diehard because they're moving hand over hand over this spinning fan.
Oh, yeah.
And
Setting
we get
it up for later.
Yes, it's Chekhov's fan or whatever you want to call it. Granny reminds them idle hands get caught in spinning machinery, which is a good lesson for all of us.
Right up there with the leopard doesn't change its shorts. Mm-hmm. Also a good line.
And then we see this group crawling through a large pipe, and then Granny knows that Herzog will use the service tunnels to go through the shower room to get to the warden, and that's where they'll intercept him.
When she said showers, because I had forgotten this episode until watching it this time. When she said showers, I was like, oh my God, they actually are going to go to a prison shower in this kid's cartoon.
So we'll get to this joke soon, but like every step of the joke, I was like, oh, that's it. And then they go one step further until perhaps they go too far, but it was 97. It's shocking. We'll talk about it. The pipes get tighter and tighter as they go to the bathroom, and Max remarks, now I know how snake food feels. So
I love the drawing of them squished together, too, is very funny.
In a very cartoony way, we cut to the showers. We see, I think, Granny Ruth's hand come out of the shower head, turn on the shower, and they all plop out of it. And then we get our prison shower humor. All right, we're going to get through it. But Sam is excited because they're always excited.
Yeah.
He goes, the prison showers. Gee, if these walls could talk. And Max is the one who's disgusted. He's like, I think it's best if they kept their mouths shut.
Yeah, it's so look, sexual assault's not funny.
Yes.
But back in the 90s, the idea of prison rape was a comedic device. It was the darkest of dark,
especially at 10:30 a.m. on Saturday morning in 1997.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, I get that sometimes standards and practices can miss things or a joke goes over their head, but I just cannot believe already just saying, like, I think it's best if they kept their mouths shut. Like, Max is already implying what these walls have seen, which is horrible, and he doesn't want to hear about it.
So that's the first step of this joke. Whenever I rewatch it, I was like, oh, wow, I can't believe they got away with that. But then it goes further because Granny hears the laughter of Herzog, and she tells the boys, turn on the water to create steam, And then there's a shot of Max staring at a bar of soap on the ground, and I'm like, oh, I can't believe they went that far.
Yes.
And then there's an entire shot set up in which Max bends over to pick up the soap, and on his butt it says, do not open until Christmas.
I could not believe that.
It's a joke about anally violating a cute little bunny character on Fox Saturday mornings, and I cannot believe people at Fox knew what that meant.
Yes, there's no way. It's a character bending over to pick up soap, which dropping the soap jokes by 97, very well known.
I feel like if Yakko bent over, even just to do the bending over to pick up soap, open a prison shower thing, Fox would be like, no.
And the extra bit that like Max literally put a sticker over his butt to prevent him from being assaulted.
And there's like a trumpet sting in the soundtrack to kind of like sell the shock of the joke.
I couldn't believe. I mean, it is a very Purcell style joke too, that it takes a child's memory of the sticker that says "Don't open till Christmas" on it, but using that over an anus is quite a different style.
Yeah, that's as far as it goes. But every time I come back to this, it's shocking. It really is.
I cannot believe that Standards and Practices at Fox or YTV didn't say like, whoa, no way, guys.
This is on the level of Cow and Chicken, where they had two lesbian characters eat carpet and tear up a box.
Yes, yeah. Right. Both, the Standards and Practices people learn more.
Less hateful? Is this less hateful than that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
hard to tell.
I'll weigh in as there's no effeminate person being mocked here, so there's no stereotype of a gay person. It's just the implication of sexual assault in a prison shower.
Yeah.
So I'll say it's less hateful.
But this is when Herzog enters the showers with his goons to sneak into the warden's office. When he enters, he sees Granny Ruth appear, just like Batman appears in an episode we recorded today.
Wow, yeah, it's very similar to the one in Read My Lips. Yeah.
And one thing Sam and Max do in the cartoon that they don't do in the comic is they do a lot of Bugs Bunny style dress ups.
Yeah, it's true.
Although in the comic, one of the things that came out of the comics was like paper dolls of Sam and Max. You can put different clothes on.
You can put underwear on Max. I remember. Yeah. No, the dress up thing, it fits for that, and it does. It didn't change from, in one full comic story, but it was part of the appeal of the LucasArts newsletter comics that they were, or Lucasfilm Games newsletter comics, because each new one was a parody of something, so you did get to see them dress up. Like, dressing up was part of the Sam and Max appeal.
I think Sam looked really good as Indiana Jones. That's all I'll say.
Yes, yeah.
Not in a sexual way. I just that's a good look for him because he's already got like the fedora. You know?
Actually, it fits the best. Yeah, I also like him in the X-wing pilot suit. I kind of like that. Yeah.
So Sam and Max dispatch these goons.
With some light towel snapping.
Yeah, some light horseplay in the shower room, and then they turn into like a matador and whatever the lady who throws him the rose is called, in like the big florally fluffy dress. That's the kind of dress up antics they do.
Yeah, definitely a Bugs Bunny style move there.
Yeah, and at this point, Herzog escapes for the first time in this episode.
Looks like it's just you and me, Herzog. Shall we dance?
Some other time, perhaps. For you see, I have an appointment with the warden.
Please don't make me go down there.
For the life of me, I don't know how we'll catch up to that rascal now. The warden's in great danger.
Gee, Granny, I'm sure we can figure something out. Top of the world, Grandma! Whoa!
Sam! I've always wanted to try this. I feel like a wee ping pong ball.
This cool northern air is a welcome blast to my blistering southern regions.
Hold on to your hats, boys. You're in for a bumpy ride.
So they jump down into the fan. It's just like Willy Wonka too, right?
Yes, you're right. Yeah, it's like the fizzy lifting drink. But man, I mean, also too, it's a great shock joke of like, I'm sure we'll figure out something. Cut to seemingly Sam deciding to kill himself.
By quoting like the movie Little Caesar, like top of the world mob before he dies.
Yes, it's the same. It's the same type of like, famous last words thing. And Max's reaction of like, Sam! But it's actually just he's excited to jump off too and pretend to kill himself. I also like Max's reaction of like, I don't want to follow him down there, right? And then in between shots, Sam is forcing Max into the toilet too.
That feels like right out of the comic page. It's just like while dialogue's happening, he's like shoving Max's head in the toilet.
Absolutely. Also, the cool northern air, blistering southern regions. That's also just a funny line. And
calling your ass your southern regions.
Yes, I guess again, it's more back to the genital region for these guys, but with always fun sayings for it.
Yeah, I welcome this butt joke.
Yeah.
So we go to the warden's office. It's quickly taken over by Herzog and his goons. Herzog gloats over this victory, but then he asks, "What is this whooshing sound?" And then Max bursts through the heating duct, and he just goes "ooga booga," which is great.
I love when Max attacks somebody somebody's face in a comic. It's always funny.
Yeah, and it's just like cartoony cloud fighting. Sam tackles the other goon. Both their opponents are knocked out. This is much like the Batman thing we covered earlier. There's always like two goons that are easily knocked out, but then there's like the main guy.
Yeah, for the final denouement. Yeah.
And I like that Herzog pulls out this kind of realistic gun, but it's just got enough accessories to make it not threatening to kids Saturday mornings. And like they couldn't have real guns in this show, so Sam and Max will have like bazookas. In the next segment, there's like a character who has a gun, but they give him a Tommy gun later because a kid can't get a Tommy gun. In one of the cartoons in the season, I think they're sick of not being able to have guns. So Sam and Max just like pull their fingers out from their belts, and it makes like cocking noises, and they're like holding their pointed fingers at like people. So I feel like they were kind of being snarky with it. Like if you don't let us have guns, they'll just have their fingers act like guns.
I recall from contemporary interviews at the time before it came out that like hearing Purcell or someone attached to the show in like a Wizard interview saying, yeah, it just can't be the real guns. They can't carry around their giant revolvers. They can pull out a bazooka, that's fine, but a real guns, which that was part of the fun of Sam and Max, of seeing these weird looking animal men with very realistic looking, or though oversized, like magnums
just
or
like
whatever.
Huge ass guns.
Yeah.
And then the Telltale games, the gun is a thing you can use at any time to shoot anything. So you can just pull out your gun at will and just fire it at whatever item you see on the screen.
Man, that's great.
But you can't kill anyone, obviously.
Of course not.
They're too good-natured. So yes, Granny's got some fun Die Hard style quips when the gun is pointed at her face. Don't you know it's not polite to point?
Boom, she's got him.
And this is when Herzog decides to hit an old lady. Just take a swing at her.
That's true. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. It's like, oh, that's but you know, she is a kung fu grandma, as we heard in that previous clip, which yeah, the music, I mean, it's the typical soundtrack, very obvious and loud.
It's a little over the top, but Herzog tries to take a punch at Granny. She pulls the fruitcake from her apron. In slow motion, we see his like entire arm shatter.
Oh, that's so good.
And I love like the very Ren and Stimpy style, just shot off and screaming with just the red blotch behind him in a very stylized way.
Yeah, those are great. And also, I like that Herzog starts by screaming, "Ah! To Lieber." It turns into him saying a very stereotypical German thing.
Basically, oh my gosh.
Yes. Yeah.
There's more cartoony action. Granny drops the cake on his foot, which knocks him out. We're getting a lot of use out of this fruitcake.
Glutton for punishment always gets his fill.
And there's a very odd scene that I don't know if this plays out the way they wanted it to. Like the huge ass of Santa emerges from the chimney. It takes a long time. He checks in to see who's nice and who's naughty, has Sam sign a clipboard and says, "See you next year." And that's basically it. Like, he doesn't actually deliver presents or anything. He's just like doing his rounds, kind of.
I love that this Santa is written as like barely verbal. He's like, "Naughty? You nice? Okay, see you next year.
Sign here."
Yeah.
And he sounds a lot like the Santa from the Rankin Bass, Rudolph.
Yeah, it's a good imitation of that guy.
Also recorded in Canada, that whole voice cast.
Yeah.
So yes, after this here in our final clip of this segment, Herzog escapes once again.
Until we meet again!
Well, that was an unnecessary display.
There's nothing out there but 30 miles of open sea. He's shark bait for sure.
That reminds me. Wasn't there a big old holiday spread down in the mess hall before all this unpleasantness began?
Hack me up a slab of that D-ring. I'm riding the night train to Pastryville.
You know, Max, this is not only the most action-packed Christmas I've ever experienced, but the first chance I've ever really had to bond with my sweet granny.
Yeah, you just can't help but love a scary old gal like her.
I don't know what to say, Ruth. You and your boys have restored order to Blood Island and given a little bit of Christmas back to these troubled souls. This is the nicest present any warden could ever ask for.
I'm glad you feel that way, Ward. I really am. But my Christmas wish would have been hanging old Herzog up by his stockings with care.
Looks like there's one more package, and it's for Granny Ruth.
A present for me? I don't recall asking St. Nick for anything.
And by the way, a tea ring is a type of cake. I don't know if it's Canadian, just like a
okay.
circular ring cake that you cut pieces out of.
I'd want to ride that night train to Pastryville, too.
Any cake is good. Doesn't matter what form it's in.
Man, that's so... I love the drawing of the happy prisoner with a chainsaw in the background. And also, yeah, the statement of, that was an unnecessary display. Like, that's such a Purcell type line too. And yes, I also love that they tease doing just the typical cute ending to every Christmas special ever.
Yeah.
And then Max mocks you for thinking they would do that.
Yeah, because Sam shakes out the present that Ruth gets, and Herzog pops out. He's all wrapped up in paper, and Max goes, "You don't suppose you'd even think we'd employ such a hackneyed device or whatever."
Yeah, I love that he says, "You don't suppose," cut to Santa outside, which is how every Christmas special ever ends, and then he laughs at you for thinking they'd end that way. Instead, they wave goodbye.
Yes, it ends with Sam and Max saying Merry Christmas to all, and to y'all, good night.
I love that, yeah. Instead of to all a good night, he says, and to y'all, good night. Yeah.
And this is before everyone said y'all, which is, we did a Talking Futurama, and it was like a joke that Fry said y'all, but it's like, you have to start every tweet with y'all, clap emoji.
Yes, yeah, it doesn't sound like you're serious about a tweet you make.
Yeah.
I said y'all all the time because of where I grew up. I feel now, though, it's like performative to y'all out now.
I think so. I'm too far of the border to y'all. I'm from Ohio, so I say folks.
I have legitimate y'alls. I have legitimate ain'ts. If I call something a Coke, I am allowed to say that.
Henry's flashing his y'all card. But yeah, I love Christmas specials. This is a fun one. Very little to do with Christmas, although, again, you're right. They're acknowledging Die Hard as a Christmas thing before everybody was talking about it.
Yeah, and it ends with a funny Christmas card with the word bloody written in blood on it. But I guess it's just Christmassy enough that you could play it at Christmas as the episode, and it could work as a Christmas special airing. But also, if you watched it in March, you wouldn't go it's not Christmas now.
And on the other side, it's a non-Christmas cartoon.
Yeah.
Which is pretty funny.
It's funny too how they bundled all the shows. All but only 2 episodes are a double length one for the full episode. All the rest are 11 minutes or I guess 10 with so really, man, they need to credit even more people with all these shorts. It's really 24 episodes.
Yeah, that's a lot of individual Sam and Max stories spread out over the 13 episodes.
Yeah, which is good because, as the next episode proves, the normal length of a Sam and Max comic, you'd have to do a lot of padding to get one of those to 22 minutes.
Yes. I don't know we'll talk about it in a second here, but if they adapted the entire comic, they could make it 22 minutes, but they chose to just take out the chunk that was the most interesting.
Yeah. I feel like they could make it 15 minutes and they'd really be pushing themselves to get to 22, but instead trimming out just a tiny bit to get to 10 or almost 11, just 5 minutes.
So we're back, and actually, I recorded another podcast between segments. That's
just how productive we are.
Yes, my energy's flagging a little, but I was actually on the line with Nadia Oxford of Retronauts. Actually, that episode goes live on Retronauts the day this one goes live on our Patreon.
Oh, wow, man.
So it's good timing. And she reminded me that the voice of King Koopa and Sam, Harvey Atkin, was a fixture in the Toronto area in terms of doing local ads. And for her, it was for Leon's Furniture. But I couldn't find, just Googling really quick in the couple minutes we had before, recording again, I couldn't find him doing an ad for Leon's Furniture, but I found another ad of him doing something else.
It's about an incredible vinyl eavesdropping designed for the man who does things for himself. It's called Plastmo. Plastmo is solid vinyl. It'll never leak or crack or rust, and it never ever needs painting. Anybody can install Plastmo. All you need is Plasmo cement. You save time and money, because once your Plasmo eavesdropping is up, you can sit back and relax.
There you go. So
wow.
That's right, little buddy. Plasmo eavesdropping.
Man, you know what? I got so used to his mean King Koopa voice that the friendly version of his voice is actually growing on me a lot more now, man.
And he's a real Mr. Cotter looking son of a bitch.
That's so great. Wow.
I bet when Gabe Kaplan became famous, he's like, that was my look.
That's so great that Nadia, Ontarioan, is giving us insight into why he was Toronto famous.
There you go.
I'm trying to learn this. Yeah.
But yeah, that's Harvey Atkin, a famous local.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, to get to hear that voice every day on your local ads, I would have loved that.
And now we're on to Bad Day on the Moon. Also, I love how a lot of the titles are basically based on old movies, or like they sound very pulpy, because we had Christmas Bloody Christmas. I think that's based on Sunday Bloody Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
And Bad Day on the Moon sounds like Bad Day at Black Rock, or there's a lot of similar like sci-fi or noirish titles.
Yeah, there's another one that it's like a parody of Day of the Jackals or Day of the Triffids or something. I think it is. Yeah. But Bad Day on the Moon is like the Sam and Max story. Like it is the Sam and Max story that gets remade more than a couple times.
Yeah, as they pointed out in the cartoon, it was originally drawn in 1978.
Which means it was like basically 20 years old when they did this almost 25 years ago. And am I correct in saying that in the Telltale games, they didn't remake this, but they did another moon story, or they went to the moon in it?
They definitely went to the moon because at least more than once, because I just replayed the first chapter, the first episode of the second season, and you do go to the moon, and I think they eventually go back. But I mean, if you're doing Sam and Max things, there's only 4 comics, and in one of them they go to the moon, so you kind of have to do that.
I don't think I'm also thinking about how we've watched anime or played Japanese video games that all make these connections of rabbits in the moon, but I don't think that was Purcell's intention in this, though.
No, and I was thinking of that too, and it's like, oh no, Steve Purcell, born in 1961, when he was 7 or 8, the moon landing happened. So a big thing when he was a kid, it was like the reverse 9/11. It's like, oh, the towers rose, there's hope.
That's true. Yeah, it was 2 years after JFK, and now he can celebrate the moon landing. And I guess this clever idea of like a parody of what people thought the moon was. I mean, this comic, I love it so much. This cartoon is a great version of it. And I was just flipping back through the pages on a illegal scan of it. I was like, God, every line in this I remember like reading out loud with my brother.
I was reading the original comic just for comparison. I'm not going to go over every change. I'll go over a few of them as we talk about the comic. But one thing I noticed is, because they're following the comic so closely, the characters aren't acting the way they do for the rest of the series, because they're adapting the comic, because the characters in the comic are very flippant. They're not engaged with what they're doing, and the story is kind of told in a very haphazard way, because it's still Steve Purcell doing a parody of his brother's characters.
Right.
So like throughout the series, the characters have to be motivated. They have to want to accomplish things. In this one, they're just like, well, here we are on the moon. Now what do we do? And then it's like, the story just kind of flows very freeform in a very fun and surreal way. But because it's adapting the comic so closely, it feels off compared to the rest of the animated series.
Well, and the in the redo of the comic, I guess for 92, I think it was.
92.
In that one, it still has the abruptness of, like, basically giant changes happen between pages like 4 times in it, which I think they handle pretty well in this, but it's even more shocking in the comic of just like, oh wait, now they're somewhere else completely now. And they just say, between pages we did this. That was pretty crazy.
Yeah, like the cut from basically Max being revived to the giant roach parade is just as abrupt in the comic.
Yes.
Like when I was watching the cartoon again, I was like, was a scene missing? It's like, no, they are adapting the comic exactly. And outside of dialogue changes, outside of like changing references to alcohol, outside of, the guns they're carrying, most of the cartoon is right from the comic, right down to the dialogue. What's really different in the comic is there's a first half of the comic where they're just on the street in their office. Flint Paper is there. They're very hard-boiled, like detective, not office mate, but like neighbor who works in the building with them.
I always loved that Flint Paper gag that I think it was recurring in at least one other comic, but just the idea that we're reading the stories of wacky, goofball, funny animals, Sam and Max, but if we had just gone slightly down the hallway, we'd see a rip-roaring, action-packed, hard-boiled detective story.
And this one cuts right to the chase, where it's like, we get the setup, then they go to the moon, and then for the next 9 minutes, they're on the moon. And it's like the rest of the comic as portrayed, with a few tiny, tiny changes.
Well, and with their plotting needed to have where the commercial break goes, the commercial break goes perfectly with the trip to the moon. That you are denied a trip to the moon, this time via commercial break instead of by page turn. Yeah.
And this episode opens, so we're in a new episode of the show. We're doing 2 segments from 2 different episodes. So we have a cold open again. And we open with a scene right out of the comic where roaches are pulling garbage out of a can. A team of them are pulling a ham across the street. As the Sam and Max are racing somewhere in their DeSoto, they run over the team of roaches carrying the ham, and they screech to a halt in an alley. Very cool car animation. This is above Nelvana's like punching weight, I think.
Yeah,
these scenes.
yeah. I think a couple scenes go over their normal level. Like probably got in trouble. It feels earlier in the show when they had like a little more budget going around.
And they're getting ready to, apprehend somebody. Their backs are pressed to the wall. Sam wants to wait till the count of 3, but Max immediately jumps the gun. And we see the barrel of a tank pointing down at a rat eating a popsicle. And Sam goes, "All right, Sonny, consider yourself pinched," which is a line of dialogue from the comic. But in the comic, he's pointing a giant barrel of a gun at this rat eating a popsicle. And then the comic continues to like apprehending this rat and his like team of rats who are like stealing.
Yeah, it's instead they use this just to set up to the opening theme of like, who are these guys? But obviously they can't have gigantic revolvers pointing at people. But I mean, I think it, at least in a Looney Tunes style, that the hard cut from them turning the corner to confront the guy to them being in a tank and pointing the tank muzzle right at the rat, that's at least it works. It works.
And kids can't get a tank.
Yeah, they can.
But we open on their dilapidated office. I will say the coolest part of the VR game is you get to like go around their office doing things for them while they're just hanging out. That is so neat.
Oh man, you just get to hang around the office. That's so funny.
You get to get get Sam coffee, make Max lunch. You get to play darts on the dartboard. You get to go through their closet and their filing cabinets. It's so cool.
That sounds great, man. I'm at least going to pull up a Let's Play of this thing.
It's really neat. Their office is always like a rundown crap hole. Max is sitting on the floor just watching a roach pull an entire chicken wing into a hole. Because this is so comic-based, there's so many things with roaches and rats.
Yeah. I'm surprised again, like standard, not that it's against the rules, but that some network executive wouldn't just go like, ew, that's gross. Like, and yeah, it's same with off the comic page. You have like a very cartoony ham or chicken, whatever, like the way that food is drawn in cartoons.
Yeah, the most generic of cartoon food. But the phone breaks the silence. They scramble to answer it. How they answer is right out of the comic pages because basically Sam grabs Max's leg, trips him, and then jumps off his head to answer the phone.
I love the reveal that when he's on the phone, he is smashed Max into a drawer with his foot, like just stepping down at him. And talk about more of these childhood 60s references. Getting a call from the commissioner with your orders for the story is Batman 66.
Totally. And I love this next thing just because of how fast Sam is talking.
You got that right. And how? It was the stern guiding voice of the commissioner with just the right kind of hair-raising case we can wrap our overactive adrenal glands around.
Are you talking dirty?
He says there's bad trouble on the moon, Max. Let's pack up and blow this joint. Did you make sure to sew ID tags on all your underwear?
But I don't.
Oh, yeah. Me neither.
We have a go for liftoff.
Then let the stars be our roadmap.
And the inside of this car, our stomach distress bag.
So in the comic, I'm going to keep saying this because there are a few changes. In the comic, they get to the moon by jamming a bunch of like match heads in their exhaust pipe.
Right.
And there is a like a little aside with Sam is like, now kids at home, don't do this unless you really want to. Then go ahead.
I love that. Yeah. And I love that it happens between pages. This explosion is more of a payoff than just like on one page they are getting in the car, and then on the next page, well, we're on the moon, and that was a great idea to put all the match heads in there.
Somehow it feels like it makes more sense in the cartoon where it's unexplained. It's even more unsatisfying because it's supposed to be bad storytelling. When Sam answers the phone, it's like, there's bad trouble on the moon. We have to go there. There's no like direct thing. Like in the other cartoons, it's like, we're here for this reason. Now let's do the thing. On this one, it's just like, there's trouble.
Yeah,
and let's go to the moon.
And it's such a vague series of troubles that get them into more trouble. Another of the jokes of like, the reference to the adrenal glands and then just Max screaming, "Are you talking dirty?"
Yeah.
Like, wow, what a like, how'd they get away with that one too? Man?
Talking about glands.
Yes, I mean glands. I get it, but and yeah, and I think his delivery of the insides be our
Stomach distress bag.
Stomach distress bag. Thank you. That almost feels like it's a Bobcat Goldthwait way. He's saying like stomach distress. Like there's an extra like gurgle to it. Or something.
Max does a little more screaming than he does in the other media. They're like I said, they're a little more animated than they normally are.
Yeah, though I mean, this episode has like the comic also has one of the biggest screams Max ever does in the whole series.
That is true. Yeah, that is from the comic. Yeah, one thing I wonder if they was kind of lost on the kids. This is not in this episode, but there's a few segments where Sam was like, "Hey kids, today we're going to teach you this," and I wonder if the kids thought they were being talked down to when really it was like an ironic "Hey kids," because like in the Sam and Max comic they would do these little one-page things. It's like a craft corner where it's like how to make Max out of a paper bag, which I think they do adapt that for the cartoon.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
But one is a very funny thing that I think is too much of an attractive nuisance. I don't know how they got away with it, where it's called Vice Squad, and it's all about how to destroy household objects with your dad's vice.
Oh wow, yeah. I can see censors not liking that one.
You know what? It was fun to crush things in my stepdad's vice.
You know, that's so funny. That one, when you mentioned like kids feeling talked down to, I also think of like Ren and Stimpy had the scenes of them talking to us like, "Hey kids, do this thing." Like, and these guys, both of them were doing it in part because they grew up with the Hanna-Barbera cartoons. Well, you know, all of the characters like Snagglepuss or Yogi talking directly to them, or like Huckleberry Hound saying, "Well, kids, we got a great show today and eat Kellogg's Frosted Flakes."
Or some bozo named Bonzo.
Yes, yeah.
Telling you which cartoons will be next.
Since they were used to the TV talking to them so much, which, you know, partially got tamped down into our childhoods because of regulation of like, wait, you can't have the cartoon characters directly talk to children. That'll tell them to buy things.
They still talk a lot to the kids in the audience, but I was a 15-year-old.
That's true, yeah.
I was a young man. So yeah, Max slams the big red launch button, labeled big red launch button, with a mallet. The car blasts upwards, leaves a big crater in the ground, and that's when we get our commercial break. And we come back, and like with most of these cartoons, Sam says, "Well, Max, here we are on the moon." So just establishing again, it's a lot of this is a parody of bad writing. You don't have it's like it's the Homer thing. Like, here we are at the Brad Goodman talk. What an odd thing to say.
We did agree to go to a self-help seminar.
Yeah,
I love that line. Yeah, I love that Max. It will sometimes point it out too. Now that I know that it originally stems from mocking your brother, it makes me love the series even more, really.
And there's a setup for a very bad joke where Sam remarks, "Breathtaking, isn't it, Max?" And Max says, "You said it, Sam. Everyone knows there's no air on the moon." And then Max holds up the original 1978 comic in which this joke came in for this comic in 1978.
Yeah, that's it's a good cover for it being a slightly corny joke that it's breathtaking, and then to have a character say, "This joke is 20 years old and it was written by a very young person then." So,
and because they're on the moon and they don't care about science, they're in their penny conscious moon gear, which is a paper bag tied around their head with a rope. Another attractive nuisance.
Yeah.
I don't know if kids should be watching this. Like, hey kids, suffocate at home with Sam and Max.
Oh man, that's such a great. Yeah, actually, I didn't even read it as that such a good dark thing, but I always love the childlike ingenuity of them, of that they they got a little bit of sellotape that they
Are you British? Sellotape
of Scotch tape.
There you go.
That they put in there as eye holes in it, and it instantly steams up with condensation, which is what happens to you in real life with a bag like that.
This feels like kids of the 60s, how they played Spaceman.
Yes, yeah, it's all of them playing, being the next Neil Armstrong or Buzz Aldrin. Yeah, but the realization of, wearing this on my head actually like sucks. It gets bad instantly.
A really great animation of like Sam breathing, but the bag gets like sucked in as he's breathing to cling against his skin.
Oh yeah, it's the outline of his big head underneath that. Yeah, it's a great drawing.
Max starts freaking out about the possibility of running out of air, and Max asks him if he brought a spare, and he says, "No, I'm embarrassed by my lack of preparation." So that's out of the comic as well.
Yeah, and you know what? This is actually this is so full of parodies of bad plotting that I was like, oh wait, that's actually good plotting. Not only that they've been setting up the trash this whole time, But that's the extra paper bag that Sam will use to scoop up Max's remains later.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't remember that. Yeah, I love the bad science of like I brought an extra paper bag of air. Yeah. But it's like when you open it to put it on your head. I mean, the logic makes no sense. But then Max makes fun of this even more by saying, "Oh, you can actually breathe on the moon. Let's follow these highway signs. Take that dippy bag off your head."
Oh, I remember when I first watched this that I was like, oh, yeah, it's on a kid's cartoon. When he said enough spine, I was like, oh, man, but I know the original line. It was one of my all-time favorite lines, like just already the idea that actually there's air on the moon. Nobody's had the guts to try. That's a funny thing anyway. But the line, those candy butt astronauts didn't have the stones to try it.
Yeah.
That's such a funny line.
But they keep, I think it's in my next clip here, but they keep Sam's response like, oh, I could never say that about an astronaut.
Yes. Yeah. I think it was that Ghost of Mars movie which sucks, but I believe there's a funny bit of they all start to suffocate on Mars, and then one decides, like, if I'm about to die, I'm taking off this helmet. And he takes it off, and then he's like, wait, you can breathe on Mars? Like, this realization. It made me think of this comment.
Wow, so they were ripping off Sam and Max, A Bad Day on the Moon. Yes, Sam questions this very strange logic.
So let me get this straight. We can breathe here, then?
I guess those prissy paranoid astronauts never had enough spine to try it.
Ooh, I could never say that about an astronaut.
What's that?
No doubt some horrifying moon creature bent on swigging the marrow out of our fuzzy bodies without even a how do you do.
I can't say I'm not intrigued. Greetings, Moonians.
You made it. Nice get-ups. Climb in.
Well, Sam, the gorilla and donkey man apparently think we're someone else.
He's a zebra, Max, and that's what makes me a little suspicious. You see, in nature, a zebra wouldn't normally hang out with a gorilla. Plus, listen to this, a zebra can't drive a moon buggy, or any kind of car for that matter. You see, zebras don't have hands, Max.
My gosh, you're right, Sam. The gorilla should be driving! I think you're onto something. We better play dumb.
You mean starting now?
Don't anybody move. This is a stick-up. All we want is the dough. And maybe one of those Elvis-shaped decanters. We want to drink from the neck hole of the king.
So again, more just insane plotting because they're just looking for, I don't know, trouble. And then a guy in a gorilla mask and a guy in a zebra mask pull up to them and say, hop in.
Yes, yeah. Oh, God, the layers. That if they didn't run into these guys, they would have just walked for miles and miles until they got to the city. And then this multi-layered, like, super-duper comedy misdirect. A mysterious cloud. Oh, who is it? It's a gorilla man and a zebra man in a dune buggy. Well, that's weird to see. And then they reveal that later that those are just robber costumes on mice or giant rats. Like, just the layers to it. And yeah, what Max is mad about is just that he's like, yeah, you're right, the gorilla should be driving.
And that's all from the comic. Yeah. The very convoluted explanation. I love when he goes, plus, listen to this. Yeah. Like he's imparting all of this wisdom onto young Max. and the part about like playing dumb, why start now? That's not in character at all. Mm-hmm. It's like the characters making fun of their very existence, which is again making fun of Dave Purcell.
And that decanter line, I think they say whiskey decanter more directly in it, right?
Yes, they say the Elvis-shaped whiskey decanter, but they keep in the line about drinking from the neck hole of the king.
I mean, that's a great line and a great joke about, like, again, 60s, 70s Americana shit, like just this garbage of the world.
Like Sam and Max Hit the Road was inspired by the Hit the Road comics or the On the Road comics, whatever they were called, that issue of the comic, but also inspired by this book called Roadside America, which was basically before the internet. It was like, here's a book of weird things. Mm-hmm. And that book was like, here are the weirdest roadside attractions. It's where they got the ball of twine from and things like that. So they're like, let's find the weirdest stuff and put that in the Sam and Max adventure game.
And I just the bit of them in the comic version of it where they go to the Stuckies and they're like, well, I'm getting the orange foam peanuts, I'm getting the unbreakable maple log, like all the great jokes of it. Also, that decanter bit, I meant to say it in the prison episode. They say, bet you a box of chocolate cigs. I was like, wow, these two, a decanter and chocolate cigs, like I feel like a year later a censor wouldn't allow that stuff.
You just have to say, change your cigarette joke to chocolate cigarettes.
And this is another of the lines I always loved as a kid that's not in this. The where he asks where their weapon is, and he's like, none of your damn business, but if you want, I'll write the answer on a slip of paper, and you can read it sometime when you're sitting down. Which I tried to do that as fast as Max. I couldn't do it quite as fast.
It's hard to do.
Yeah.
So now Sam and Max are seemingly accessories to an interspecies holdup, but the robbers take off their masks to reveal they're actually giant rats. And the shopkeep is a rat too. And the difference in the comic is they're holding actual pistols, but in the cartoon they kind of science them up a bit. But they're still pointing guns in a guy's face.
They got to be space laser pistols, just like the guns every character carries in Spider-Man 1994, that series. I love, too, that he goes like, oh, you're that Henderson kid. I recognize that voice. And in the comic, he always says, I always knew you were a hood. Like, what's a funny extra line to know that the shopkeeper was like, I made these assumptions about you. I knew you were one of the Sharks or the Jets. Like, this is basically like a scene from West Side Story.
Without that follow-up line, I feel like the first part shouldn't even exist in the cartoon. Like, we need the follow-up line.
I guess, again, this is such a random comic and cartoon that you don't need logic to it, but when he says that Henderson kid, that's why the guys take off the disguise. Like, well, if you recognize me anyway. And so you get the reveal that they're rats. So it works from a plot purpose. But yeah, if you don't have the, like, I always knew you were a hood, it weakens that reveal a bit. Yeah.
So the shopkeeper is being robbed. Max asks Sam, shall we slap the sleep on him and make him cry uncle? And we get another great Sam trademark line. Can't think of a reason not to.
Sam just goes with the flow. We're going to beat the crap out of these guys.
And they're more violent in the comic. Not very violent, but the beating happens off screen. We see the buggy bouncing in the street. When we cut back into it, the crooks are taken out. And the clerk wants to know where these strange travelers have come from. And this line is the same in the comic, but in the cartoon, Sam's voice actor does like a Shatner thing, and they play like a Star Trek riff too.
Well, because it is a Star Trek reference. The music cue is meant to make it. When I heard the music cue, I was like, wait, this has to be a Star Trek reference. So I put in Google one of those points of light you see in the sky at night with Star Trek, and that is from, Kirk does say that in the original series episode Omega Glory.
Jesus, okay.
I didn't know that off the top of my head. I had to Google that one. Sometimes I recognize a Star Trek thing, but that is a very deep Star Trek reference.
I guess Purcell did not include all of the Shatner ellipses in his original lettering.
Yeah. No, you're right. Atkins goes even harder on the Shatnerism there.
By the way, it's Atkin.
Atkin.
But there's the Atkins diet.
Sorry, I get that mixed up.
Yes, I'm sure, looking at Harvey Atkin, he enjoyed his carbs.
Hey, don't we all?
Yes.
Yeah.
But all throughout this, the clerk will not put his hands down.
It's so funny.
For no reason. Again, like, this is not the style of the cartoon, which is still very random and weird, but this is like every choice is wrong. People are acting, for no reason. We're in different locations for absolutely no reason. It's just very haphazard.
For some reason, a shopkeeper knows the mayor wants to talk to them and walks them there with his hands up. Yeah, this is pure absurdism here.
And he seems very sheepish about this whole thing, this man, but he's like, oh, the mayor wants to see you. The mayor lives like in a castle. And as we get close to the destination, Max, the rat's talking to Sam about what's happening. Max is like, you can put your hands down now. It's okay, you can put your hands down. And then he eventually loses it and screams in his face, which is all from the comic, too.
He even gets to say, for God's sake, which there's other times in this comic where they say gosh instead of God, but I love that he gets to even scream, God's sake! Yeah, and then they're walking into the Palace of the Wizard of Oz, too.
Yes, and they meet with the mayor, who's essentially the giant Wizard of Oz head.
I'm gonna miss that little fella. He smelled like a fine gorgonzola.
So does your belly button on hot summer days.
Hello!
I've been expecting you, men of the Earth.
Ooh, men of the Earth. I like that.
Your assistance is required to resolve a certain pest problem which plagues our glorious city. The situation is very grave.
A pest problem? A town load of rats has a pest problem, Sam? That's pretty funny. And from a flying head. Amazing.
Your tiny skulls do not fully comprehend. Citizens are disappearing, taken away, and used for unspeakable evil.
Okay, don't pop your cork, Chief. Just where might we find these so-called pests?
The creatures you seek may be found on the dark side of the moon. Now, be gone!
Where?
Just out the back door. Go through the janitor supply room and take a right.
Hey.
It's that easy.
Love that. Yeah, it's just, well, again, that's great Purcell joke about bad plotting. It's like, well, I don't want you guys to take a long time to get to the dark side of the moon. Just walk through like 2 doors and then you're there.
Because the comic at this point is like 80% over.
Yes, yeah. God, man, and the dark side of the moon, also again a very like his generation reference there too. Yeah.
And thankfully it's right out the door. There's like a demarcation in the ground where the dark side of the moon begins. And the dark side of the moon is a world of roach-like leviathans lumbering through a gargantuan cityscape. See, these are hard to say.
I know.
And I wrote it down verbatim.
I love how the actor pronounces it Leviathans. Yeah.
Canadian? Maybe it's a Canadian thing.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
But it makes it even funnier. But yeah, and also how Max goes like, isn't it cute they're man, I just can't quote them with it if I didn't write it down.
They're gathering in clusters?
They're gathering in clusters,
Yeah.
yes.
See, that's why we're not voice actors.
It's a challenge. We can get there. We'll be voice actors someday.
We've told our editor multiple times, let me do that again. Except for now. So yeah, the dark side of the moon is a giant kitchen where roaches live. And the roaches are much bigger than them. And
it's just so great that it's like a filthy 50s diner wherever as Sam recognizes, they just drink coffee and eat sweet rolls. That's all they do.
Yes. And they duck into this giant cereal box.
Oh, it's like a roach motel. It's so great. Oh.
And they're hiding to watch their behavior. And they see, instead of stirring some sort of non-dairy based creamer into their coffee, they're adding basically a jar of rats into their coffee and stirring
Eating them
it.
alive.
Yeah.
It's horrifying. Yeah.
Sam looks sick at this and tells Mac, I'm having a lot of trouble watching this. So Max decided to turn on the lights so Sam can see more of it.
I love that. I'll get the light. Yeah, that's such a great gag.
And more great descriptions because the roach spits out this coffee because roaches will scatter at the sign of light. You know that about roaches. But upon spitting out his coffee, Sam remarks, the universal sign of surprise and alarm, which is true. Spitting out your coffee is the universal sign of surprise.
Yeah.
Universal sign of surprise.
It's another great line to start their big rush to run. And yeah, it's every time they said a line directly from the comic, it's just like extra like ringing in my ears of like, oh yes, the comic. Yeah.
Boy, like writing this alliterative dialogue is easy. Getting people to say it must have been like I want to hear the Harvey Atkin outtakes.
Oh my God, yeah,
or outtakes as they would say.
I would probably think he was happy they didn't do a second season.
I got to cut a Leon's commercial at 3. Let's go.
Those only take like 3 takes. This takes a dozen to say it right.
I know how to say Barcalounger. Yes, thankfully the roach spits out the rats with his coffee.
Yeah, no. In the comics, there's just pure death, but there's a couple covers for death here where they're like, no, he spit them out, or with the roach at the end of the episode too. They cover for that.
Yes, that guy gets to live. They run from the roach in a very kind of off-model way, but they're just mimicking a panel from the comic.
Yeah, and then I'll admit, when I first read this as a little kid, it actually did make me sad for a whole page. It really did.
And I'm surprised they adapted this because it involves the character being mutilated beyond belief because they're running away. Max gets a little too confident because he sees a roach stopping to goof around with a lever, seemingly unimportant lever.
He thinks he's an idiot for doing that. Like, he stopped to play with his lever. What an idiot.
He thinks it's unrelated to their escape.
Yes.
Sam slides to the entrance just before the roach activates his laser grid. But then what happens next is shocking because Max is just a bag of chum.
We're through, Max. We escaped with our fuzzy rear ends intact. Right, Max? Max? Smells like burning upholstery out here. Hey, Max! Max? Now what do I do? My little buddy is just a bag of chum.
Sam, it's me.
Max? Where are you, little buddy?
I'm inside you, Sam. Everything that makes me a unique individual, except for my bones, guts, and so on, is now stored within you. Creepy, huh?
Hold on a second. Let me try something.
What are you doing?
There. At least now you look something like your old self, even though you smell like a fire in a wig factory. Oops. Sorry, little buddy.
It's all right.
What are you doing? What's the progress on the giant roach problem? And why are you carrying that smoldering dish rag around like a hand puppet?
Hey!
Something horrible happened out there, Chief. Maybe you can help us.
My Minister of Science will advise you. Get here.
All that's left of Max is a scalp.
It's just a pile of like goop, like white goop. Yeah.
And then basically, you can't see the clip obviously, but Sam puts the scalp on his hand and makes like a Senior Wincest hand puppet because Steve Purcell was alive to see Ed Sullivan, right?
Yes, yeah.
He was there to see Topo Gigio.
I love that it starts with the shining finger, and Sam decides, like, you know what, I don't want you to be the shining finger. I'm going to turn you into Topo Gigio. But yeah, in the original comic, after every page is just joke after joke and so tightly written with tons of dialogue on the page, that he takes a whole page for like 2 silent panels of Sam scooping up Max's body into a bag. It actually, like, for real made me sad. Like it was some shock as a kid.
But it's again more fun bad plotting where it's like, what am I gonna do now? And it's like, oh, Max is inside me now for no reason.
Yes. And and the mayor just drove up to say, what's going on?
Yeah. Although I don't think he drives up in the car in the comic. I think that's a cartoon edition, which I really like because the giant head now has like a giant car. He's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's a great. Yeah, actually, they walk back to the guy's place in the comic. It's way. I think it is actually more funny for it to drive up. Like, what are you guys doing? Why are you talking to this carpet sample?
He, like, the window rolls down and the giant head comes out, and Sam gets in the gigantic limo. We cut to Sam in the lab of the science minister, who's basically a rat in these robes with like the classic SNL cone head with like veins coming out of it, which I think there are Star Trek aliens with the big heads too, or Outer Limits aliens. I'm thinking.
Definitely the Outer Limits ones. Yeah, I mean that's the one for where Scratchy wakes up in the future with the da-da, like that stuff. But I love that he mentions peanut brittle for savage backwards rituals.
Yes, that's another Steve Purcell thing right out of the comics.
And I mean, peanut brittle, it's funny. It's a comedy word, and it's so Americana. Like, it's, again, just so many details of American garbage, just like diner coffee and sweet rolls being eaten, like peanut brittle. I love it.
I'm sure it's delicious. It's just peanuts trapped in some sort of candy-like concoction, but whenever I see it, I'm like, oh, just like in cartoons.
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean, every time you see it, you have to think, like, obviously there's snakes inside of that.
Yes.
There's no actual peanut brittle.
I will not buy this. Please listen to the Paul F. Tompkins, like, 9-minute peanut brittle bit.
It's the greatest comedy bit of. Actually, I think I like it. Smash Penny's one even slightly better. But yeah, it's like peanut brittle from a can, like we all see all of the time. We all love to buy and eat peanut brittle from a can.
So Sam drops Max's scalp into this fishbowl with like a long tube attached to it, and Sam has to put on the helmet of supplicants. Feels like the convolutions of my brain are being analyzed. I hate that.
That's such a great line. For no reason. And then basically, like, he's going to be made to pee his pants, he sticks one finger in a jar of green liquid that he thinks could make a good soup stock.
Yes, the procedure continues.
When I was hauling your remains around in that oily paper bag, the phrase moist garbage kept running through my head, and it gave me an idea.
Maybe something good will come out of all of this.
Besides a mouth-watering soup stock?
Be still, for this is the critical juncture where success or failure of the procedure will be determined.
Does that mean we get peanut brittle?
Hey, sadly they don't get any peanut brittle, seemingly, but that's technically intentionally good plotting. The bag full of moist garbage, that's when it hit Sam the idea that would help them forge a peace treaty with the cockroach leviathans.
And even when they invade Earth.
Yes. Yeah.
there's a home for them. So the rat scientist turns the dial up. It zaps Sam terribly. The water in Max's bowl bubbles over, and then we cut to an abrupt new scene.
So abrupt, which I love. Like you said, just like it's panel to panel in the comic, like not even page to page, mid-page that it happens.
And we're at a ticker tape parade celebrating the union between humanity and the giant roaches from the moon. And basically the dialogue that's happening from the announcer is happening between people in the audience, but the announcer is reporting, these husky fellows have agreed to accept all the moist garbage our citizens can produce.
Husky fellas. What another great line.
And things wrap up very nicely in my next slightly long clip.
Well, we solved the unrest on the moon. The city's limitless supply of garbage should put an end to the giant roaches eating those little rat folks. And it sure is nice to have you back in your own plushy little carcass again, Max. How do you feel, buddy?
Not bad, although I'm cranky and listless. I'm retaining water and I keep spitting up sawdust.
It's a plain old itty-bitty earth roach, and he's packing heat.
I don't like the look on his face. It's cold, calculated, almost inhuman.
Why aren't you out celebrating? Don't you know this is one of the first cockroach-related holidays?
Celebrate what? The loss of acres and acres of valuable garbage? We're just giving it away. Why aren't we looking after our own vermin before we cater to foreigners, huh? Well, answer me, huh?
Oh, take it easy, little fella. Just hand over the piece and nobody gets hurt. Right, Max?
I'm thinking, ow.
Sometime we should sit down and have a spiritual discussion about the sanctity of life, Max.
Bam! And then he was mucilage. Did you say something, Sam?
Oh, never mind. I think I feel one of my lame songs coming on.
Oh, no, not that!
Was a bad day when my buddy Max got fried up on the moon. Was vaporized before my eyes by some multi. You cracked me up, little buddy.
Oh,
yes, in the
God.
comic, he does kill the roach. But all the dialogue is exactly the same about, like, you know, giving our garbage away to foreigners.
Yeah, that's such a great, shocking line, too. Again, like, this is a xenophobic cockroach. I also love, it's already a great line of, like, don't you know this is one of the first cockroach-related holidays? But that Atkin pronounces it cockroach.
Yeah.
Cockroach.
But it's like, this is why I love Sam and Max. It's like they walk in and a roach is holding a gun to their faces and he's like, well, what do you know?
Yes, yeah. And Max describing him as like almost inhuman, which is a cockroach. Of course, his face would be almost inhuman. And you know, he just did Batman the Animated Series episode with a ton of Tommy guns in it. So when I saw this roach with a Tommy gun, I was like, okay, it's under the Tommy gun rule.
Yeah, in the comic, it's just a pistol. And again, they're back in the mode of like, we're going to make fun of our own existence because this is kind of a parody of something the readers don't know about. That's why I love when Sam goes, how about another one of my lame songs?
Yes.
Like, he doesn't think his own banjo playing is lame anywhere else in the series, but he's like, how about I play a lame song that you hate?
And that in the comic, Max just complains, but I prefer him just face first biting the neck of the guitar and destroying it. And you know, it hit me this time. It's like, oh right, he calls him little buddy because he's Alan Hale. He's the skipper.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, that xenophobic roach, he deserved that stomping. It was in self-defense. You know,
I agree. That's why in the dialogue is the same, but having conversation about the sanctity of life makes more sense when you kill a thing.
Yes, yeah, which Max doesn't give a crap about at all, and it works great in both versions, whether it's a Tommy gun or a regular pistol. Him throwing it over his shoulder into their closet full of weapons is also just so great. Just loose closet full of weapons.
Yeah. In the cartoon, it's more like sillier weapons. In the comic, it's just like a closet full of pistols. But yeah, I will say that... but they don't act like this any other time outside of like the first adventure game, because in order to be more on board with like a story with these characters, they have to be more invested. So they can still keep their chipper attitudes, but they have to be like focused on the goal. But in this one, it's like, well, here we are at this place, and then like abrupt changes and weird logic. And I mean, they keep a lot of the surreal touches, but this kind of storytelling cannot sustain for that long.
Not for a full series.
Yeah,
you're right. Purcell made the right choice to have the rest of the series not follow This Is Silly, but I mean, I'm so glad that if he was going to adapt any one comic directly, I love that it is something that means so much to him as his 70, something he had done in 78, redid in 92, redoes again in this, like just this recurring theme through his life, putting Sam and Max on the moon for a nonsensical adventure full of like wacky things that happen for no reason.
Now we have to make it into the next Pixar movie.
Yes, yeah.
Bad Day on the Moon. Just call it Moon. You're Pixar.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, man. Just have a dog and a bunny. It doesn't, and have them voiced by people doing imitations. But man, I loved when I was a little kid reading those Sam and Max comics. As you know, I love to sing. I loved singing my own little tune to those Sam songs when he would sing them too. But man, it's adorable. And it makes me laugh every time seeing it. I love traveling back to the moon with these boys.
I have a lot of affection for these characters. I'm glad that they still persist. As long as Steve Purcell is still around, I think we'll see one new Sam and Max thing per decade, which is great.
Yeah.
And I feel like they'll be around for a while. As long as people remember the 90s, they'll remember Sam and Max, even though they're characters from the late 60s, early 70s, who were then a comic in the late 80s, early 90s, who were then a TV show in the late 90s, and then Telltale Games and so
and
on
then
and
a
so
video
on.
game in the late aughts, and I hope they get another bite at the brass ring, and please, Steve Purcell, just get it back in print. Just get that comic back in print. I'm sure there is a small press outlet that will print those. They would, if they did a 10,000 copy run, they'd sell them all easy.
I need to buy another copy. My 27-year-old copy could fall apart at any minute.
Kickstart it, Steve. People will pay, or whatever people use instead of Kickstarter now.
And there's still a hunger for these characters. This year, new figures came out, and they're great. I never buy figures. After doing this, I might buy a Sam, because I love both the designs, but I really love Sam's design. I love his big rumpled suit, his great huge face and nose, the way his mouth kind of comes to a point in a way that doesn't make sense, like his bottom jaw.
Yes, I love his alligator jaw. Like it's like he's a triangle and Max is a circle, but just that his two teeth, he has no center teeth. It's just like two lines of teeth that meet at a point.
Yeah, in a way that doesn't make any sense, like anatomically, but they're able to animate him.
Must have been tough for the character model
yes.
sheet. Yeah.
But yeah, this has been great. And this can all be found on Tubi or YouTube or whatever. And, it's not all as funny as what we covered in this episode, but it's great they got to make it. And I hope there's more games or something soon. But hey, there was just a game last year, and the Telltale remakes have been very, very cool. And there is no shortage of Sam & Max stuff. And you can go through all of it pretty quickly, because there's only so much Sam & Max to go around.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't drawn too many more pages of comics since that 1995 collection came out. Really.
No, we need to liberate Steve Purcell from Pixar. Let's say, Steve, retire and just become the Sam & Max guy.
I know. You come on. You must have enough money and accolades by now, right, Steve?
Do what we want you to do with your creative life.
Yeah, that's what your life should be. I don't care what your family or your wife thinks of this. Like, do what we say.
Exactly. That's our motto when we want a cartoon.
Do what we say.
Or you're in trouble. But yes, thank you for listening, folks, so much. If you want to support our show and get these episodes 1 week ahead of time and ad-free, please go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. Sign up for $5 a month. You can get just that, but also access to everything behind the $5 paywall. That includes over 100 miniseries episodes about things like The Critic and Mission Hill. And also you get monthly access to our miniseries about both Futurama and King of the Hill, as well as access to all the ones we've made before that. There is so much happening behind that $5 paywall. You get early access as well. It's all happening only at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. Go there now. And we also have a $10 level. Sign up there for $10 a month. You get everything I just mentioned, but also access to one mega-long podcast once a month, only for patrons of that level or higher. What is that, Henry?
Bob is talking about the What a Cartoon movie podcast, where we talk about an animated feature film super in depth, just like we do a couple episodes of Sam & Max Freelance Police. This month, as long as you're in the holiday spirit from this episode, you're going to want to hear us talk about the holiday/New Year classic, Tokyo Godfathers. We go super in-depth into that. Last month, we talked for over 5 hours about Paranorman as part of our Halloween hangover. There's a giant back catalog. If you love all this talk about 90s stuff, I bet you would love hearing us talk about a Goofy movie or Ghost in the Shell or so many others. There's over 4 years of What a Cartoon movies at your fingertips, over 260 hours, and all the $5 things Bob mentioned. Please head over to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons and see for yourself just what you are missing.
And I also forgot to mention we are currently doing our newest mini-series, and that's Blabbing About Batman, the animated series. Sign up for the Patreon. You can actually access all of those as they go live throughout the end of 2022. And as for me, I've been one of your hosts, Bob Mackey. You can find me on Twitter at BobServo. My other podcast is Retronauts. You can find that wherever you find podcasts, or go to patreon.com/Retronauts. Sign up there for 2 full-length bonus episodes every month. And Henry, how about you?
You can follow me on Twitter at HENEREYG. Look there for all of your Henry Gilbert needs. Also, if you're following us on Twitter, follow the official Twitter account at TalkSimpsonsPod on Twitter. We're also that on Instagram. Check that out too. And if you're looking for an easy-to-follow list of every episode we have done for free of Talking Simpsons and What a Cartoon, head over to TalkingSimpsonsPodcast.com.
Thank you so much for listening, folks. We'll see you again next time for our extended free preview of our What a Cartoon movie episode all about Tokyo Godfathers, and we'll see you then.
Fortunately, our fragile little life essences are protected by this penny-conscious moon gear.
Hey, what happens when my paper bag runs out?
Did you bring a spare?
I'm embarrassed by my lack of preparation. I'm a fool.
Man, it's getting hot in here, and my windows are steaming up. I don't know how the heck we're gonna contact the natives.
Just yank that dippy bag off your head and let's follow these highway signs.
Grandma, can I have the chocolate chips?
This secret recipe moment made possible by Emory Heart and Vascular Center. When Grandma needed heart care, she came to Emory. The difference? Emory Healthcare performs more heart procedures annually than anyone else in Georgia, which means better outcomes for our patients. And we offer advanced and personalized treatments developed by our top specialists that others don't. Like Grandma knows, where you start your heart care matters. Smart Cookie. EmoryHealthcare.org/smartcookie.